Chapter 1206. After all, back in the Nanda region, Yi Xian had truly tricked Yao Yueya. If he told the Lord of all Spirits about this, the Lord of all Spirits would definitely find it suspicious. Fortunately, the Lord of all Spirits was too confident. He only asked if Yao Yueya had obtained the inheritance of a Chaos Star Master. When he received a negative answer, he was not interested in asking anything else. After all, the Lord of all Spirits was the strongest of the 10th period. Nothing was worth mentioning in his eyes. Only the inheritance of a Chaos Star Master could arouse his interest. However, it was this confidence of the Lord of all Spirits that allowed Yi Xian to avoid a calamity. One had to say that Yi Xian's luck was extremely good. Violet Spirit. Since he entered the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, it can be considered fate between us. Take him to the Enlightenment Pavilion to study the 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture. If he can comprehend a bit, it can be considered fate, the Lord of all Spirits said indifferently. His figure gradually disappeared from the palace. This servant obeys. Violet Spirit hurriedly kowtowed, then hurriedly scolded Yao Yueya. Why aren't you thanking the Lord of all Spirits? This disciple thanks the Lord of all Spirits. Yao Yueya hurriedly kowtowed, his entire body drenched in cold sweat. On the other side, Yi Xian and Gai Tianyuan heaved a sigh of relief at the same time. Fortunately, they managed to survive this calamity without any danger. Just now, the two of them were indeed trembling in fear. Even through the profound light mirror, they could feel the enormous pressure from the Lord of all Spirits. The great Tao suppressed everything. Yi Xian believed that his heart was as firm as a rock, and he regarded the Lord of all Spirits as his greatest opponent. However, just through the profound light mirror, he felt his heart tremble. This was not because Yi Xian was afraid, but because the Lord of all Spirits' power made him feel too insignificant. That kind of superior pressure made his heart tremble. However, this also aroused the fighting spirit in Yi Xian's heart. Kid, you're in luck. I didn't think that Yi Lingtian would let Yao Yueya study the 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture. It seems that Yi Lingtian also wants to cultivate the strongest of the next period. Gai Tianyuan sneered. 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture? Yi Xian was suddenly startled and instantly woke up. That's right. It's the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture. It's a cultivation method created by Yi Lingtian. The 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture allows one to cultivate the power of 10,000 spirits. The power of 10,000 spirits is one of the 12 ultimate powers. Gai Tianyuan explained in a deep voice. 12 ultimate powers? Yi Xian muttered. It was unknown what he was thinking in his heart. Yi Xian had been in the primal chaos world for a long time, so he naturally knew that every Yuan Hui would produce a powerful force. The 10th Aeon was the Lord of all Spirits' power, and it was one of the 12 supreme powers. Was Yi Xian's immortal day. The time. Violet Spirit had already left the ancient palace with Yao Yueya, and was heading towards the Enlightenment Pavilion. Yao Yueya was also very excited, because he could see the legendary 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture. This was a great opportunity for him. Yi Xian, you must remember the contents of the 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture. This is a great opportunity. Gai Tianyuan reminded Yi Xian in a deep voice. Soon, Yi Xian saw Violet Spirit and Yao Yueya entering the Enlightenment Pavilion through the dark light mirror. The Enlightenment Pavilion was extremely vast. There was only a withered old man guarding it. It was impossible to tell what his cultivation was. But from Violet Spirit's respectful attitude towards the old man, Yi Xian could guess that this old man was definitely an extremely terrifying figure. However, Yi Xian did not feel too strongly through the dark light mirror. At this moment, his thoughts were all on the 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture. This scripture was a treasure on the same level as the Immortal Scripture. Naturally, Yi Xian was looking forward to it. The Enlightenment Pavilion was divided into 9 floors. The 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture was placed on the 9th floor. When Violet Spirit brought Yao Yueya to the 9th floor, they saw an ancient stone book floating in the void. Little brother, you only have 3 days to comprehend the 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture. If you can comprehend even a little bit, this will be your chance to soar to the heavens. Violet Spirit solemnly warned before leaving. Yao Yuya nodded continuously with an excited expression on his face. After Violet Spirit left, only Yao Yuya was left on the 9th floor. He impatiently sent his spiritual perception towards the stone book. The legendary 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture opened at this moment. Quickly remember the contents. Gai Tianyuan roared with a trembling voice. Even without Gai Tianyuan's reminder, Yi Xian was already waiting with rapt attention. He would definitely imprint the contents of the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture in his mind in the shortest amount of time. 1. The Law of Primal Chaos, Light of 10,000 Spirit. When the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture opened, various sounds of the Great Tao could be heard. Yao Yuya was completely immersed in the sounds of the Great Tao. How can this be? On the other side, Yi Xian roared with disappointment because he couldn't see the contents of the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture at all. This made him extremely disappointed. Sigh, as expected. Gai Tianyuan sighed softly. He was also extremely helpless. Just what is going on? Yi Xian anxiously asked. A great opportunity was clearly placed in front of him, but he couldn't obtain it. This made him extremely angry. Yi Xian didn't care about other things, but the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture was in existence on the same level as the undying Immortal scripture. Yi Xian simply couldn't accept this result. A supreme technique, traceless heaven and earth. You and I can only see everything through the profound light mirror. We can't understand the profoundness of the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture. I should have thought of this earlier. Gai Tianyuan sighed with disappointment. Is there really no other way? Yi Xian stared at the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture in the profound light mirror and let out a sinister roar. He found that Yao Yuya was extremely stupid. At this moment, he was completely at a loss. Obviously, he didn't have the slightest understanding of the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture. He had wasted a great opportunity. There is a way, but... Gai Tianyuan hesitated before speaking. In the end, he wanted to say something but stopped. Obviously, his method wasn't a good one. However, Yi Xian didn't think so much. The opportunity was right in front of him. No matter what, he couldn't let it go. If he gave up this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, he would probably regret it to death in the future. What is the method? Yi Xian anxiously roared. The profound light mirror is a spiritual treasure. You have even inscribed chaotic star runes on it. Therefore, it can be used as a small teleportation array. As long as you teleport over, you can naturally comprehend the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture. However, Gai Tianyuan slightly paused. However what? Yi Xian hurriedly asked. However, if you teleport over, the old man guarding the Tao Comprehending Pavilion will definitely discover you. Even more dangerous is that if the Lord of all spirits discovers you, you will undoubtedly die. Gai Tianyuan let out a long sigh. This? Yi Xian felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. The excitement that had just risen in his heart instantly disappeared without a trace. Great hesitation appeared in his eyes. This was a gamble of life and death. If he won, Yi Xian could comprehend the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture. If he lost, Yi Xian would undoubtedly die. Yi Xian was afraid of death. He admitted it himself. However, he was even more afraid of falling into mediocrity. On the path of becoming stronger, he had gambled countless times with his life. However, it was different this time. Not to mention whether the Lord of all spirits would discover him. The old man guarding the Tao Comprehending Pavilion was very likely a terrifying existence in the immortal realm. Gai Tianyuan, I don't want to waste time talking nonsense. I need your help. Yi Xian was greedy, extremely greedy. He wanted to obtain the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture, but he wouldn't act rashly. If he really teleported over, the old man guarding the Tao Comprehending Pavilion would discover him before he could comprehend the 10,000 Spirit Immortal scripture. At that time, only death would await him. The only person Yi Xian could rely on now was Gai Tianyuan. I have the Sky Yuan Sky Concealing Technique. I can conceal your aura from this immortal realm expert. However, if the Lord of all spirits will sweeps over the Tao Comprehending Pavilion, both you and I will die, Gai Tianyuan said in a low, sinister voice. Do you dare take the gamble? Yi Xian growled savagely. His eyes were already filled with madness. Kid, this old man will accompany you in this crazy gamble, Gai Tianyuan said solemnly. In fact, Yi Xian wasn't the only one who wanted the 10,000 spirit immortal scripture. Gai Tianyuan was also very greedy. He wanted the 10,000 spirit immortal scripture even more. Chapter 1207. The two of them had staked everything on a single throw, gambling with their lives. How crazy was this? Condense. Gai Tianyuan's soul trembled as a strand of heavenly origin energy rippled out, instantly enveloping Yi Xian. Yi Xian's aura vanished, making it impossible to sense his existence. Heavenly Origin Sky Shrouding Technique. This was a peerless technique of the Heavenly Origin battle physique, capable of concealing one's tracks. It was also one of Gai Tianyuan's secret techniques, capable of completely concealing Yi Xian's aura. Let's go. Gai Tianyuan's soul was weakened after using this technique, so he hurriedly reminded Yi Xian. After all, they didn't have much time left. Yi Xian's expression was grave as he stepped into the dark light mirror without hesitation, instantly teleporting to the 9th floor of the Tao Enlightenment Pavilion. Boom! The divine sound of the great Tao, the light of all spirits. Yi Xian had just appeared on the 9th floor of the Tao Enlightenment Pavilion when a dazzling halo entered his eyes. It was the myriad spirits' immortal scripture floating in the air. At the beginning of the chaos, all things had spirits. Comprehend the mysteries of the universe, and comprehend the mysteries of the chaos. Abstruse and difficult to understand, the sound of the great Tao lingered in Yi Xian's ears as milky white runes appeared in front of Yi Xian's eyes, instantly causing him to fall into a daze. This was the sound of the great Tao, the ultimate truth of the chaos. Not only did it contain the Lord of all spirits' understanding of the chaotic universe, but it also contained the supreme techniques he'd created. Yi Xian fell into a trance in an instant, unable to extricate himself. He constantly tried to comprehend the myriad spirits' immortal scripture in front of him. Although the scripture was extremely difficult to understand, he forced himself to memorize it all. At the same time, Gai Tianyuan wasn't idling around either. After all, he'd once been an immortal realm cultivator, and possessed the heavenly origin battle physique. He quickly studied the myriad spirits' immortal scripture, hoping to learn something from it. Suddenly, Yi Xian let out a muffled grunt. A trace of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth, as if he'd suffered some kind of serious injury. Stop! Gai Tianyuan was startled awake. When he realized that something was wrong with Yi Xian, he hurriedly scolded him. Clearly, the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture was too obscure and difficult to comprehend. Wanting to comprehend this technique in the first place was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Furthermore, Yi Xian forcefully tried to memorize the contents of the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture, which naturally caused him to suffer a backlash. The 10,000 spirits immortal scripture was a supreme technique created by the Lord of all spirits. If everyone could cultivate it after reading it once, wouldn't that be a joke? In the entire 10,000 spirit heavenly palace, it wasn't that there weren't any people who could successfully cultivate the 10,000 spirit immortal scripture, but there was absolutely no one who could immediately comprehend its mysteries, let alone completely memorize it. However, Yi Xian was too impatient. He wanted to force himself to memorize it so that he could slowly study it in the future. But this was also a great taboo. I have the power of space-time, and the power of nirvanic extermination protecting me. Even if my mind is damaged, I can still remember the contents. Yi Xian roared savagely. He had completely sunk into a state of paranoia. He ignored Gai Tianyuan's advice, and continued to memorize the contents of the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture. Gai Tianyuan's remnant soul was shocked. He hadn't expected Yi Xian to be so stubborn. It had to be known that forcefully memorizing a supreme technique was extremely harmful to one's body. However, Gai Tianyuan also knew that they didn't have much time left. They only had 3 days. Once the 3 days were over, the two of them would have to leave. Otherwise, if they were discovered, they would definitely die. Time slowly passed. A short 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Xian could be said to be mentally and physically exhausted. His consciousness began to waver, but he still tried his best to memorize the contents of the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture. Root of all spirits, origin of chaos, origin of origin, birth of all spirits? Yi Xian muttered in a daze. Strands of extremely terrifying ripples connected with the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture. Then these terrifying ripples spread out in all directions. This is bad. Gai Tianyuan roared in shock. He had never imagined that Yi Xian would be enlightened at such a time. Moreover, his aura was connected to the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture. This was a good thing. It meant that Yi Xian had comprehended the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture. However, such a good thing just had to happen at such a time. This was simply putting him and Yi Xian in danger. The Sky Yuan sky obscuring technique could indeed conceal one's aura, but that was all it could do. Now that Yi Xian had erupted with his aura, it would definitely attract the attention of the elder guarding the Enlightenment Pavilion. Sure enough, in the next moment, something terrifying happened. How dare you steal the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture? An earth-shaking roar shook the heavens. Heaven and earth twisted as a terrifying aura suddenly appeared. A vortex opened on the 9th floor, and the elder guarding the Enlightenment Pavilion walked out from the other end. Yi Xian, run! Gai Tianyuan roared in a trembling voice. He no longer cared whether Yi Xian was in a state of enlightenment or not. If they didn't escape now, they would definitely die here. At the same time, Yi Xian woke up without Gai Tianyuan's reminder. He instantly turned into a stream of light and entered the Xintian mirror, disappearing from the 9th floor of the Enlightenment Pavilion. Boom! In the next moment, the elder guarding the Enlightenment Pavilion suddenly appeared. The power of the law of primal chaos was released to the extreme. The unparalleled power of the immortal stage completely sealed off the entire Enlightenment Pavilion. The elder looked around. Waves of furious aura constantly overflowed. However, no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find anyone other than Yao Yuya in front of him. Impossible! I clearly felt a second aura appear here just now. The elder roared angrily. He was very confident in his senses. There was definitely someone who had entered here just now. Uncle Ling, what happened? In the next moment, Violet's spirit instantly appeared. She looked at the elder in shock. Clearly, she was also alarmed by the terrifying aura that erupted from the elder. Someone entered this place while this kid was comprehending the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Scripture and tried to steal it, the elder said in a low voice. How is this possible? Hearing the old man's words, Violet's spirit simply could not believe such a fantasy story. This was the 10,000 Spirits' heavenly palace. Not to mention that the elder was at the immortal stage. There was also the Lord of all spirits here. Who would dare to steal the scripture? It can't be wrong. Someone has indeed entered here, the elder said confidently. The old man spoke with certainty. As a sempiternal realm expert, if he couldn't even sense the aura of the other party's aura wrongly, he would have wasted all his efforts. Rumble. Everything was silent. Heaven and earth froze. An ancient aura rippled over, causing Violet's spirit and the elder to kneel on the ground. Greetings, Lord. Violet's spirit and the elder hurriedly kowtowed. This aura was emitted by the Lord of all spirits. An outsider has entered this place, the Lord of all spirits said indifferently. His voice reverberated throughout the Enlightenment Pavilion. This old servant deserves to die. My lord, please punish me. Slave Ling kowtowed repeatedly with an extremely ashamed look on his face. Have you found out who it is? The Lord of all spirits' voice was indifferent. Chapter 1208. This old servant is ashamed. I don't know how this thief entered the Tao Enlightenment Pavilion. The spirit slave's forehead touched the ground, his body trembling. Although he was an immortal realm existence, in front of the Lord of all spirits, he was no different from an ant. Reverse. Rumble. The Lord of all spirits' voice reverberated, and the void suddenly distorted to the extreme, as if time was rewinding. Buzz. The world spun, and the scenery changed drastically. It was as if time had really reversed at this moment, and Yi Xian's figure reappeared. However, this was merely a scene that had happened in the past, and not the real thing. But from this, It could be seen how terrifying the Lord of all spirits was. Just a simple move could reverse what had just happened. Someone really did enter here. The spirit slave suddenly raised his head, his expression extremely gloomy. This was because he had been careless, not noticing how the other party had entered the Tao Enlightenment Pavilion. Why can't I see his face clearly? Violet Spirit looked at Yi Xian in confusion, but Yi Xian's figure was now extremely blurry. She could only see a figure, but not his face. It had to be said that Chaos Star Masters were indeed a terrifying inheritance. Although the Lord of all spirits had reversed the scene just now, Yi Xian had entered this place with the help of the dark light mirror, inscribed with Chaos Star runes. It was impossible to know how he had appeared, and even his appearance had not been revealed. It's him. Suddenly, an illusory figure appeared on the 9th floor of the Tao Enlightenment Pavilion. It was the Supreme Lord of all spirits. However, at this moment, the Lord of all spirits did not care if the 10,000 Spirits Immortal Sutra had been stolen. Instead, he stared at Yi Xian's blurry figure, and even his aura became extremely chaotic in an instant. It was as if the Lord of all spirits recognized Yi Xian, or even as if he had met Yi Xian before. Impossible. Suddenly, the Lord of all spirits said coldly. However, a throbbing presence unknowingly seeped out. An unbearable pressure permeated the surroundings, forcing the spiritual slave and Violet Spirit to their knees again. He does not exist in the future, and he died in the past. He was originally an illusory person. Could it be that this person truly exists in this world? The Lord of all spirits' breathing was heavy as he muttered incomprehensible words. Could it be that this person is from the present world? The Lord of all spirits seemed to have thought of something. An extremely oppressive aura was born out of nowhere. Spirit Lord, do you know this person? The spirit slave probed. The Lord of all spirits had always been high and mighty. No matter what he encountered, he would not be affected in the slightest. No one and nothing could attract his attention. But now, a mere thief was able to cause such a huge change in the Lord of all spirits. This was simply inconceivable. Spirit slave, do you still remember the final battle? The Lord of all spirits was silent for 3 breaths before he slowly uttered these words. Of course I do. Back then, in the final battle, you reached the pinnacle and became the Lord of the 10th Yuehui. The spirit slave hurriedly kowtowed and replied respectfully. Then do you still remember the person who fought with me in the final battle? The Lord of all spirits asked in a deep voice. It's him. Slave Ling seemed to have thought of something. His entire body was terrified. His lips were trembling as if he had thought of something that terrified him. You mean to say that this thief is the person who fought with you in the final battle back then? The spirit slave asked in shock. He simply could not believe such a ridiculous thing. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Didn't that person disappear back then? Moreover, if this thief really is him, with his cultivation back then, there's no need for him to steal your 10,000 spirits immortal scripture. The spirit slave said in a trembling voice. It can't be wrong, it can't be wrong. These two people have the same aura. Although the person who stole the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture today is extremely weak, this lord definitely can't be wrong. He's from the present world. He's actually from the present world. The Lord of all spirits murmured in a deep voice. His aura fluctuated to the extreme. This also proved the extent of the Lord of all spirits' mental state. No one knew that the Lord of all spirits actually had a shocking secret hidden in his heart. And this secret was that final battle. It was also the day he achieved the great Tao of Chaos and became the most powerful person in history. That day, Yi Lingtian stepped on the corpses of all heaven's powerhouses and pushed his way forward. He was determined to obtain the position of the most powerful person in history in the 10th epoch, and even carried out the so-called final battle. The divine sons of various sects, the mighty figures of the chaos, the 8 sect leaders, and the astral beast god all prostrated themselves at Yi Lingtian's feet. At the moment when he was about to transform into the most powerful person in history, one person appeared and broke his legend of invincibility. Yi Lingtian had never forgotten that day, and would never forget it. Even though more than 100 million years had passed, he was already the most powerful person in history. That matter of the past still lingered in his heart. On that day, the long river of time rumbled and surged. A lonely figure walked from the end of the long river of time. No one knew his past, no one knew his future, and no one knew who he was. He just stood on the river of time and looked down at him. A great battle that could shatter the heavens also began between the two of them. Yi Lingtian had always thought that he was invincible. Who among the great enemies in the heavens could be his match? He had never been defeated in his life. But when faced with this person who walked out of the long river of time, he was truly and completely defeated. Crushed, naked, crushed, and all of Yi Lingtian's pride was destroyed. That battle caused the chaotic universe to collapse for hundreds of millions of miles. The stars were falling, and the starry sky was collapsing. Even though Yi Lingtian wanted to sublimate and kill this peerless enemy, he was no match for this person at all. Bathed in blood in the starry sky, his body was broken, and he, Yi Lingtian, fell at the feet of others for the first time. Disheartened, he roared in the starry sky. Yi Lingtian roared at this person and asked who he was, but the other party did not answer his question. That battle was Yi Lingtian's only defeat, but he really could not afford to lose, because if he lost, he would lose the qualification to become the strongest of all time. That day, he was already waiting for death to come, but something that shocked him happened. The person who walked out of the long river of time quietly left and returned to the long river of time again. In his shock, he became the strongest of all time. But Yi Lingtian was not reconciled. He was not willing to be defeated by this person, and he did not want the other party's charity. He crazily asked this mysterious person why he did not kill him, but the person only left him a faint sentence. Reversing the long river of time, breaking the ancient world, and the present world. Eternity is long and lonely, and eternity is empty. In the future, perhaps you and I will meet again, or perhaps we will never meet again. The long river of time surged, and this mysterious person also disappeared with it. Yi Lingtian finally knew that this person was not from his era. However, this battle was the eternal pain in Yi Lingtian's heart. It was also the greatest humiliation in his life, because he did not even know who he had lost to. After Yi Lingtian achieved the Tao, he personally stepped into the Temple of Time and Space, hoping that the Master of Time and Space could give him an answer. He wanted to fight this mysterious person again. Unfortunately, the Master of Time and Space remained silent, and did not mention a word about this mysterious person. In the end, the Lord of all spirits returned empty-handed. However, the thief who broke into the Enlightenment Pavilion today had an aura that was very similar to that of the person from back then. Although it gave him a very weak feeling, the Lord of all spirits was very sure that these two were definitely the same person. This was because he was too familiar with that person's aura. Even if more than 100 million years had passed, he would not forget it. He's from the present world. He's from the present world. Ha ha ha. You and I will meet again one day. This time, I will not lose to you. Suddenly, the Lord of all spirits laughed wildly, and his entire person disappeared in an instant, leaving only Ziling and the spiritual slave stunned on the spot. They did not know what had happened to the Lord of all spirits. Chapter 1209. In the ninth spiritual palace. Bang! A muffled explosion sounded out as Yi Xian fiercely smashed onto the ground. Blood flowed out of his mouth as he instantly fainted. Forcefully memorizing the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture had already caused Yi Xian to be mentally and physically exhausted. His mental state had also suffered a great deal of damage when he escaped from the Enlightenment Pavilion at the last moment. This was also why Yi Xian had fainted. When Lei Lan saw that Yi Xian had fainted, he was stunned. Then, his face turned gloomy as a cold murderous intent flashed across his eyes. This person is vicious and merciless. This is the best time to kill him. Lei Lan murmured as the murderous intent around him grew thicker. Lei Lan was a true villain and very smart. He had always known that Yi Xian was using him. However, in order to survive, he had no choice but to follow Yi Xian's orders. Although he did not know what had happened to Yi Xian, he knew that he was severely injured and unconscious. This was the best time to kill him. Buzz! A spiritual dagger appeared quietly as Lei Lan carefully walked towards Yi Xian. The murderous intent in his eyes grew colder. As long as he pierced the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows, he would definitely be able to take his life. What are you trying to do? Suddenly, just as Lei Lan was about to kill Yi Xian, Gai Tianyuan's extremely cold voice sounded out. This caused Lei Lan to be shocked, and the spirit dagger in his hand fell to the ground in fright. Who is it? Who's talking? Unfortunately, the voice came and went quickly. Gai Tianyuan fell silent again. His remnant soul was extremely weak, and could only threaten Lei Lan. He could not stop Lei Lan from killing Yi Xian. Fortunately, Lei Lan was a coward. After hearing Gai Tianyuan shout, the murderous intent that had just risen in his heart vanished like smoke. His entire being was clearly flustered. Actually, Lei Lan couldn't be blamed for wanting to kill Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian was just a fake spirit child. Moreover, his methods were too insidious. Who knew when he would take his life? Moreover, if he could kill Yi Xian, it would be considered a contribution to the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. When Lei Lan revealed the truth, he would definitely be rewarded by the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. It could be said that there was no harm in doing so. Unfortunately, due to Gai Tianyuan's shout, Lei Lan missed the best opportunity to kill Yi Xian. You want to kill me? Suddenly, just as Lei Lan was in a state of panic, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. However, his gaze was cold and cruel, causing Lei Lan to kneel on the ground in fright. I'm innocent, I'm innocent. How would I dare to have evil intentions towards Lingzi? Lei Lan kowtowed as if he was pounding garlic. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. I don't think you have the guts. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and slowly got up from the ground. However, he didn't kill Lei Lan immediately, because he was currently weak and couldn't use any of his cultivation. His injuries were too severe. The 10,000 spirit immortal scripture had drained his mental strength too much. His cultivation was obviously not listening to him. Look after them. Without my orders, don't disturb them, Yi Xian said coldly. He strode into the secret chamber and began to treat his injuries. In the secret chamber. That was close. I almost died, Gai Tianyuan said weakly. Thank goodness you shouted. Otherwise, I would have died in the hands of this villain. Otherwise, I would have been a joke. Yi Xian sighed. Yi Xian had been through a lot. If he really died in the hands of this villain, he wouldn't be able to rest in peace. Have you memorized the entire 10,000 spirit immortal scripture? Gai Tianyuan asked in a low voice. The 10,000 spirit immortal scripture is too profound. 3 days is too short. I only memorized half of the content. The most important part, the general outline, is still missing. Yi Xian was slightly disappointed. You've already done very well. Gai Tianyuan wasn't disappointed, because he had already expected this result. Yi Xian had actually done better than he had expected. To forcibly memorize a supreme technique in just 3 days was a fantasy. Yi Xian being able to do this already made Gai Tianyuan look at him in a new light. What I'm worried about now is Yao Yueya. We've already alerted him. If something happens to him, I'm afraid our whereabouts will be exposed, Yi Xian said in a low voice. Don't worry. The chaos star pattern has concealed the secrets of heaven. Even Yi Lingtian won't be able to find out how we entered the enlightenment pavilion, Gai Tianyuan said with certainty. Let's hope so. Yi Xian kept feeling uneasy. He had a feeling that the Lord of Myriad Spirits was not so simple. This feeling was very strong. It was as though he had met the Lord of Myriad Spirits somewhere before. Naturally, this was only Yi Xian's feeling. He was certain that he had never met the Lord of Myriad Spirits before. However, this feeling left him very puzzled. Thus, he could only suppress it and begin healing his exhausted state of mind. Several days later, Yao Yueya finally returned to the 9th spiritual palace. Violet Spirit had personally escorted him back. Yao Yueya was completely unaware of what had happened to him. He only remembered that he had been studying the 10,000 spirit immortal scripture. After that, he fell into a state of confusion. It wasn't until Violet Spirit woke him up that he was brought out of the enlightenment pavilion. Brother Yi, I have completed the task you gave me. Can you let them go now? Yao Yueya bowed towards Yi Xian, a pleading look in his eyes. I only promised you that I wouldn't kill them. I never promised to let them go. Yi Xian smiled. You? Yao Yue's face turned red. He wanted to scold Yi Xian for not keeping his word. However, in the end, he sighed helplessly and became extremely dispirited. He knew that Yi Xian would not let him go. His family was Yi Xian's bargaining chip. Brother Yao, you should thank me. After all, I was the one who allowed you to reunite with your family. Don't worry. As long as you are obedient, I will return your freedom in the future. Yi Xian took out the gourd again and instantly sucked Yao Yue and his family into it. Why didn't you kill them? Gai Tianyuan's voice rang out. His heart was filled with doubts. He had known Yi Xian for quite some time now. Gai Tianyuan already had some understanding of Yi Xian's way of doing things. Logically speaking, Yi Xian killing them was the safest thing to do. Only the dead could keep secrets. Yao Yue cannot die yet. He is much more useful alive than dead, Yi Xian said indifferently. Yi Xian could see how important Yao Yue was from meeting the Lord of all spirits. If something like this happened again in the future, he would naturally need Yao Yue's help. That was why Yi Xian did not kill him. That's right. He is very useful to you alive, Gai Tianyuan agreed. He also understood the crux of the matter. Although I won't kill Yao Yue, some people must die. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. A cruel killing intent flashed through his eyes. Chapter 12:10. He was trembling with fear and restless. This was Lei Lan's current state. For the past few days, he had been restless. He was afraid that Yi Xian would kill him. He had thought of escaping, but Yi Xian had planted the power of nirvanic extermination in his body. Even if he ran to the ends of the earth, he would still die. However, after half a year, Yi Xian did not kill him. Instead, he rewarded him with many treasures, and even comforted him. This made Lei Lan gradually lower his guard. Yao Yi, don't go too far. On a certain day after half a year, an angry roar came from outside the 9th spiritual palace. This made Lei Lan and the 4 maidservants rush over. They saw the 10th spiritual child, Tuobatian, and Yi Xian facing each other in the void. To be honest, ever since Tuobatian knew that Yi Xian had become Purple Spirit's sworn brother, he did not want to have anything to do with Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian came to him personally and said that he wanted to spar with him. No matter what, Tuobatian was the 10th spiritual child. Now that someone had come knocking on his door, wouldn't he be a laughingstock if he were to compromise and allow Yi Xian to humiliate him? If it was just a spar with Yi Xian, it would be fine if he lost. At most, he would be humiliated. After all, he was ranked behind Yi Xian. This was not considered shameful. He could endure it, and it would be over. However, Yi Xian did not humiliate him enough. He even asked for his 2 maidservants and flirted with them in front of him. The hatred of killing one's father and stealing one's wife were the 2 biggest grudges in the world. Although the 2 maidservants were not Tuobatian's wives, Tuobatian had intimate relations with them, and they were his women. Yi Xian's actions were simply humiliating him to the extreme. Tuobatian could tolerate Yi Xian, but he could not tolerate such humiliation. The 2 of them fought from the 10th spiritual palace to the 9th spiritual palace. This was how this scene happened. Old 9th, I didn't want to make things difficult for you, but you've gone too far. The 2 murderous swords clanged as the Tongtian sword radiance messed up the clouds. Tuobatian's furious voice reverberated in all directions. This also proved that he had been humiliated to the extreme by Yi Xian. Set up the formation. Yi Xian sneered as he waved his hand towards Lei Lan and the 4 maids. Yes, Lingzi. Lei Lan and the 4 maidservants did not dare to be negligent. The 5 of them immediately got into formation and stood in front of Yi Xian in an instant. 9th brother, you actually want them to fight me? Are you trying to humiliate me? Tuobatian was furious. He didn't expect Yi Xian to look down on him like this. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Yi Xian frowned. Kill. Lei Lan did not dare to be careless. She took the lead and attacked Tuobatian. The 4 maids followed closely behind. However, the 5 of them were only putting on an act because they knew that they were no match for Tuobatian. Scram! Tuobatian's sword finger moved, and the Tongtian sword radiance swept out. Following the sound of metal clashing, Lei Lan and the 5 maidservants were sent flying and landed heavily on the ground. However, Tuoba Tian did not kill them. After all, he didn't want to fight to the death with Yi Xian. He was only putting on an act. If he really killed Yi Xian's subordinates, the 2 of them would not rest until one of them was dead. Old Ninth, come and fight me. Tuoba Tian raised his 2 swords in the air and roared at Yi Xian. However, in the next moment, dozens of divine generals appeared and blocked the 2 of them. They were Divine General Bai Zhe and the others that Yi Xian had met before. Lingzi, please calm down. If you continue to fight, I will have to report this to the Sky Capital Court. Divine General Bai Zhe bowed to the 2 of them. Old Ninth, you will remember what happened today. The appearance of Bai Zhe and the others made Tuoba Tian sigh in relief. After all, he didn't really want to fight Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian's relationship with Purple Spirit made him extremely wary. He used this as an excuse to leave behind some harsh words before turning around and flying away. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't stop him. He had already achieved his goal. Sorry for bothering you again. Yi Xian cupped his hands and bowed to Bai Zhe and the others. He had a kind smile on his face. Lingzi, you're too polite. Bai Zhe quickly bowed and smiled. During their second meeting, Yi Xian invited the divine generals into the 9th spiritual palace, and even set up a banquet to entertain them. During the banquet, it was very lively. Yi Xian and Bai Zhe became familiar with each other. Bai Zhe and the others only left in the evening. It was late at night, and the moon hung high in the sky. Yi Xian stood in the middle of the spiritual palace with his hands behind his back. However, his expression was cold and strange. When he opened and closed his eyes, there was a flash of killing intent. You went through so much trouble just to kill a few ants. I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill. Gai Tianyuan's voice sounded at the right time. Remember, there's nothing wrong with being careful. This is my way of survival now. Yi Xian said faintly. He took a step forward and disappeared. In the side hall, Lei Lan was sitting cross-legged to adjust his breathing. However, his eyelids kept twitching, and he couldn't calm down to cultivate. Everything that happened during the day made him feel that something was wrong. No, there's a problem. There's definitely a problem. Why did he order us to attack Tuoba Tian? He clearly knows that we're no match for Tuoba Tian. Lei Lan suddenly opened his eyes. As if he had thought of something, a flash of fear appeared in his eyes. He suddenly stood up and wanted to escape. Actually, you're very smart. I also admire your intelligence. Suddenly, without waiting for Lei Lan to move, Yi Xian's laughter rang out, and he appeared in front of Lei Lan. You. Lei Lan was horrified. Large beads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He took a few steps back, because he had already guessed what Yi Xian was going to do. You want to kill me with a borrowed knife? Lei Lan roared with a trembling voice. See, I told you that you're very smart. You really didn't disappoint me. Yi Xian praised. Lingzi, spare me. Spare me. I've been loyal to you. Lingzi, please spare my life. Plop. Lei Lan knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Xian. He was extremely frightened. Actually, I admire people like you. If it was any other time, you could be a sharp knife in my hand and solve many problems for me. However, you know too many of my secrets. Therefore, you're destined to die. Because only the dead can keep secrets. Don't you think so? Yi Xian smiled. Run. Without any nonsense or hesitation, Lei Lan immediately activated his strongest secret skill. He even squeezed out his own blood essence and turned into a blood-red rainbow light to escape. Sigh. A light sigh came from Yi Xian's mouth. He didn't seem to have made any movements, but with just a stretch of his 5 fingers, the entire space suddenly froze, causing Lei Lan's fleeing figure to abruptly fall to the ground. A miserable cry came from his mouth. You'll die a horrible death. Wah! Lei Lan spat out a mouthful of blood. There was no sign of life on his body. He fell heavily to the ground and was directly killed by Yi Xian. Dong dong dong. Yi Xian strolled to Lei Lan's corpse. He looked down at Lei Lan, who died with his eyes wide open. Then he slowly shook his head and whispered, Being weak is the original sin. This is also the reason why you died. Spiritual child. You. Suddenly the four maids flew in. When they saw Lei Lan die tragically at Yi Xian's feet, the four of them were completely stunned. I'm not your spiritual child. However, it's indeed a waste to kill four delicate beauties like you. Looking at the delicate and flustered faces of the four maids, Yi Xian shook his head helplessly. Fortunately, he wasn't mesmerized by women. Moreover, he couldn't let these four girls live. You can go now. Yi Xian's sword fingers pierced through the sky and four rays of sword radiance appeared in the void. The dazzling sword radiance instantly pierced through the glabella of the four maids. They didn't even have time to scream before they turned into four huge cold corpses. You really have the heart to destroy flowers. What a waste of these four beauties. Gai Tianyuan sighed. Oh, you old man. I didn't expect you to have a tender heart. It's a pity that even if I give the four of them to you, you won't be able to do it. Yi Xian sneered. However, even if you blame their deaths on Tuobatian, I'm afraid that Tuobatian won't admit it. Gai Tianyuan changed the topic. It doesn't matter if he admits it or not. As long as the outside world thinks that he killed them, it's enough. Yi Xian said calmly. Chapter 12:11. Vicious and merciless, murdering people to silence them. Now that all the hidden dangers around you have been eliminated, you have gained a firm foothold in the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace, and have obtained a large portion of the 10,000 Spirit Immortal Scripture. Are you going to go into seclusion to cultivate? The more Gai Tianyuan interacted with Yi Xian, the more he found Yi Xian to be an extraordinary person. Even if he did not want to admit it, if he had Yi Xian's temperament back then, he would not have fallen to his current state. You're wrong. There are still some problems that have not been dealt with. I need to completely eliminate these problems before I can focus on cultivating. Yi Xian said darkly. You're talking about Ji Yinyang? Gai Tianyuan probed. That's right. Yi Xian nodded calmly. Ji Yinyang, Tuobatian, and the others were already on his to-kill list. With Violet Spirit as your backing, these people will not dare to provoke you. Why waste your time on them? Gai Tianyuan asked in confusion. You're wrong. Yi Xian clasped his hands behind his back, his voice venomous and chilling. Ji Yinyang is indeed wary of Violet Spirit, and has even backed down before Violet Spirit's might. But it is because of this that I need to kill him as soon as possible. A brute is not scary, but an ambitious and ruthless person who knows when to yield and when not to be. Although Ji Yinyang looks like he is neither a man nor a woman, and is very loathsome, I have to admit that he is quite a character. So I need to completely eliminate this potential threat. But with your current level of cultivation, it will not be easy to kill him, will it? Gai Tianyuan asked in a low voice. If I go all out, I will at most be on par with him, but that will also expose my identity, and I may not be able to kill him. But it is easier to dodge a spear in the open than a stab in the dark. Sometimes it is not necessary to use force to kill someone, Yi Xian said coldly, and if I am not wrong, even if I do not make a move against him, Ji Yinyang will most likely be plotting against me. What a pity, what a pity. He is indeed a great person, and his disposition is extremely vicious and cruel. However, he just so happened to encounter me, someone who is even more vicious than him. So he is destined to have no good ending. The one who strikes first gains the advantage, and the one who strikes later suffers. Before he makes a move, I'll kill him first. This is my way of doing things. At this point, Yi Xian's lips curled into a sinister smile, and a cruel and ferocious look flashed across his eyes. Ji Yinyang had never imagined that Yi Xian would turn out to be an even more vicious person than he was when he wanted to deal with Yi Xian. If Ji Yinyang was a villain, then Yi Xian was a vicious villain. He would not wait for others to kill him. He would take the initiative to kill his enemies. But how can you kill Ji Yinyang? Gai Tianyuan asked. If you want to kill someone, you have to understand everything about him. That's why there's a saying. Know the enemy and know yourself, and you'll be victorious in every battle. Yi Xian smiled strangely. But you don't have anyone by your side now. How can you know the enemy and know yourself? Gai Tianyuan was puzzled. Gai Tianyuan, you're a good person, but you're too inexperienced in the art of controlling people. Do you think I invited these immortal generals to the banquet just to win their hearts? Yi Xian sneered. You mean? Gai Tianyuan seemed to have caught a glimpse of light, but he still could not understand Yi Xian's real intention. In the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace, there are as many as carps crossing the river. There are hundreds of millions of immortal generals and immortal soldiers all over the 10,000 spirit kingdom. Who can compare with these immortal generals and immortal soldiers when it comes to being well informed? Look at the 5th spirit palace. There are countless immortal generals and immortal soldiers guarding it. They must know what Ji Yinyang does every day and who he meets every day. What I need to do is to win their hearts. I need to make my reputation as the 9th spirit sun bigger and stronger. I need to make these immortal generals and immortal soldiers, who are looked down upon by everyone, work for me. Yi Xian said solemnly. But how are you going to win their hearts? Although Gai Tianyuan was once an expert in the immortal realm, he was still too inexperienced in the art of controlling people. He could not figure out how Yi Xian was going to win their hearts. Unfortunately, Yi Xian did not answer his question, because the art of controlling people could only be understood and not explained with words. The next day, Yi Xian's earth-shattering roar was heard, causing the clouds to rumble. He walked out of the 9th spirit palace and strode toward the 10th spirit palace where Tuoba Tian was at. His body was burning with rage. Tuoba Tian, get out here. Outside the 10th spirit palace, Yi Xian roared furiously. The power of his roar caused the 10th spirit palace to tremble. Tuoba Tian, who was indulging in a gentle moment, was instantly awakened by Yi Xian's roar. He put on his robe and shot out of the palace. 9th brother, I already let you go yesterday. How dare you come here again today? Tuoba Tian's face was gloomy. He hated Yi Xian to the core. You killed 4 of my maids and coachmen. You must give me an explanation today. Yi Xian roared furiously, as if Tuoba Tian had really killed his people. What nonsense are you talking about? When did I kill your maids and coachmen? Tuoba Tian was stunned. Yesterday, you sent my people flying with a single sword strike and severely injured them. They died from their injuries in the middle of the night. How dare you say you didn't kill them? Yi Xian roared coldly. Impossible. Tuoba Tian said blankly. My sword strike did not take their lives. How could they have died? The dignified 10th spirit son actually dared not admit that he killed people. You are simply a joke. If I tolerate this today, others will say that I am afraid of you, Tuoba Tian. Rumble. A demonic moon rose behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly raised his 5 fingers and directly attacked Yi Xian. This also made Tuoba Tian suddenly wake up. He no longer had the time to argue with Yi Xian. 9th brother, you dare to attack me? Tuoba Tian roared furiously. He took out his 2 swords again and attacked Yi Xian. If you don't give me an explanation today, I will smash your 10th spirit hall. When it came to putting on airs, Yi Xian was indeed an expert. His every move was filled with anger as he fought with Tuoba Tian. Bang! 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 The fight between the 2 of them caused a huge commotion and immediately attracted the attention of the living beings in the area. However, no one dared to casually interfere in a fight between spirit sons. To be honest, although Tuoba Tian was in the 9th Heaven Saint King realm, and was in the same realm as Yi Xian, in terms of combat power, Yi Xian was much higher than him. If Yi Xian really unleashed his cultivation, he would definitely be able to kill Tuoba Tian. However, Yi Xian did not come to kill him today. He had other intentions. Rumble. The clouds exploded and the void collapsed. The 2 of them became more and more furious as they fought. Angry roars could be heard from time to time. 9th brother, it is not too late for you to retreat now. Tuoba Tian slashed out with his sword and shouted loudly at Yi Xian. Chapter 12:12. To be honest, Tuoba Tian did not want to be entangled with Yi Xian, as he was afraid of attracting the attention of sacred emissary Purple Spirit. If Purple Spirit really killed him out of anger, then he would be wronged. However, Yi Xian did not let him go at all, and had no intention of stopping. Instead, he attacked him even more fiercely, causing him to be at a disadvantage. 2 spiritual sons, please stop. Suddenly, dozens of light rays shot over. It was Divine General Bai Zai and the others. Obviously, they were in charge of this area. Now that there was a battle between spiritual sons, they had to stop it. Brother Bai, Tuoba Tian killed my maid. I must teach him a lesson. You should retreat for now, so that you won't be implicated. Yi Xian advised Bai Zai as he attacked Tuoba Tian crazily. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Divine General Bai Zai's expression changed slightly. He looked at Tuoba Tian with an unfriendly gaze. As the saying goes, a person's kindness is remembered forever. Moreover, Yi Xian had invited them to a banquet yesterday and treated them as friends. Bai Zai wanted to help Yi Xian deal with the 10th spiritual son, Tuoba Tian. Unfortunately, they were only the lowest level divine generals. If they really interfered, it would cause a great disaster. What are you trash looking at? Why don't you report to the Sky Capital Court? Tuoba Tian retreated as he fought, because he was already at a disadvantage. If he really lost to Yi Xian, not only would he suffer heavy injuries, but he would also become a joke if word got out that he, Tuoba Tian, wasn't a match for the 9th spirit son. Being called trash by Tuoba Tian, Divine General Bai Zai and the others were angry, but they suppressed it. Big brother, let's report to the Sky Capital Court. If we are late, we will be punished. A divine general quickly advised. But we are indebted to 9th spiritual son this? Bai Zai hesitated. Big brother, why are you so muddle-headed? We are not trying to harm Jiulingzi. Tuoba Tian killed Jiulingzi's maidservant. The people from the Sky Capital Court must uphold justice. The divine general reminded. Bai Zai immediately woke up and nodded. Yes, let's report to the Sky Capital Court. As Bai Zai spoke, he flipped his hand and threw out a jade talisman. The jade talisman transformed into a beam of light and flew into the distance. Half an hour later. Stop! Suddenly, a deep voice boomed from the horizon. A ray of 7-colored red light arrived with a bang. The cultivation of the 3rd realm of creation shook the world. The person who had arrived instantly stood between Yi Xian and Tuoba Tian. Greetings, priest of Tiandu. Bai Zai and the rest hurriedly knelt on the ground. Yi Xian and Tuoba Tian also stopped fighting at this moment. However, the two of them were spiritual sons, so they only cupped their hands and bowed to the person who had come. With a face as red as date, and a 3-foot-long white beard, the heavenly capital divine priest was tall and sturdy. At this moment, he was frowning as he looked at Yi Xian and Tuoba Tian with a trace of helplessness in his eyes. Why are the two spiritual sons fighting? The divine priest of Tiandu asked faintly, with an indifferent attitude. Although the 12 spiritual sons were respected, the Sky Capital Court was in charge of the punishment of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Other than the first 5 spiritual sons, the divine priest of Tiandu had the right to punish the rest of the spiritual sons. Naturally, he did not have a friendly attitude towards Yi Xian and Tuoba Tian. Divine priest, the 9th spiritual son has gone too far. He slandered me for killing his maidservants and even came to fight. Tuoba Tian cupped his hands and bowed. 9th spiritual son, is this true? The divine priest of Tiandu frowned. Yi Xian snorted coldly. He was the one who killed my 4 maidservants and coachman first. Where did this slander come from? The divine priest of Tiandu's expression changed when he saw Yi Xian's indifferent attitude. No one dared to be so rude to the divine priest of Tiandu. He wanted to scold him, but he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Instead, there was a tinge of fear in his eyes. It was no wonder that the divine priest of Tiandu reacted this way. It was already known that the 9th spiritual son was the sworn brother of the purple spirit sage. Although he was the divine priest of Tiandu, he could not afford to offend the purple spirit sage. 10th spiritual son, you really killed the 9th spiritual son's men? Although the divine priest of Tiandu did not dare to be angry with Yi Xian, his attitude towards Tuoba Tian was completely different. He truly displayed the power of the divine priest of Tiandu. Tuoba Tian's expression changed slightly. He wanted to deny it, but he did injure Yi Xian's maidservants and coachmen yesterday. At this moment, he was not sure if he was the one who killed them. Looking at Tuoba Tian's hesitant expression, the divine priest of Tiandu suddenly understood. It seemed that Tuoba Tian was indeed in the wrong, and had really killed the 9th spiritual sun's men. The 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace has its own rules. Spiritual sons are not allowed to kill each other. Since you, the 10th spiritual sun, caused trouble first, it seems that I have to report this to the Registrar General to punish you. Hearing the harsh words of the divine priest of Tiandu, Tuoba Tian's expression changed. His lips moved slightly, as he secretly transmitted a message to the divine priest of Tiandu. No one knew what he was saying to the divine priest of Tiandu secretly. However, in the next moment, the divine priest of Tiandu's expression changed. It was obvious that Tuoba Tian's words had shaken him. Even the sternness on his face dissipated. In the next moment, the divine priest of Tiandu's tone changed. He looked at Yi Xian, as if he was in a difficult position, and said, "However, the 10th spiritual sun was accidentally killed. The 9th spiritual sun, you were the first to come here. Both of you have made mistakes. Moreover, the 12 spiritual sons are as close as brothers. Why don't we turn this into a small matter?" Obviously, the divine priest of Tiandu wanted to settle this matter, because he could not afford to offend the people behind the 2 spiritual sons. What if I don't agree? Yi Xian's eyes were sharp. He could tell at a glance that the divine priest of Tiandu wanted to smooth things over and settle this matter. However, Yi Xian did not buy it at all. The divine priest of Tiandu's expression changed. He did not expect Yi Xian to not give him any face. Damn Tuoba Tian! Of all the people you could offend, you had to offend the 9th spiritual sun who had just gained power. The divine priest of Tiandu was resentful. He could not afford to offend the purple spirit. However, the person behind Tuoba Tian was an important person. He could not afford to offend him either. At this moment he was in a dilemma. At this moment, he could not side with anyone. However, he still had to settle this matter. This made the divine priest of Tiandu regret coming here. Just as the divine priest of Tiandu was feeling badly battered, he suddenly saw Divine General Baizhe and the others kneeling on the ground. This made his eyes light up as an idea suddenly appeared in his mind. The so-called battle between spiritual sons was nothing more than a matter of face. As long as he could show enough respect, this matter would naturally be settled. In order to settle this matter, he naturally needed a scapegoat. Wasn't this scapegoat right in front of him? How dare you neglect your duty and provoke a battle between 2 spiritual sons? Do you know your crime? Suddenly, the divine priest of Tiandu roared. His face was already burning with anger. A terrifying murderous intent burst out from his body and suppressed Divine General Baizhe and the others. The divine priest of Tiandu changed his target. This immediately stunned Divine General Baizhe and the others. They did not understand why the divine priest of Tiandu was attacking them. "Divine priest, what crime have I committed?" Divine General Baizhe asked in a daze. "What crime have I committed?" The divine light of Tiandu roared furiously. The battle between the spiritual sons yesterday was the cause. However, you divine generals did not report to the Tiandu court in time. This allowed the 10th spiritual sun to kill the 9th spiritual sun's maidservant by mistake. Today the battle between the 2 spiritual sons started. You neglect your duty, and you ask me what crime I have committed? As the saying goes, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. The divine priest of Tiandu turned the spearhead to Divine General Baizhe and the others. What he said was even more reasonable. This directly stunned Divine General Baizhe and the others on the spot. They did not know how to defend themselves. Chapter 12-13. If you had reported impartially yesterday, today's dispute would not have happened. You should be executed for your crimes. Divine official Tiandu rebuked loudly, a terrifying murderous intent permeating the air. Please calm down, 2 spiritual sons. These divine generals patrolling a region was originally a small matter, but it was their negligence that led to today's incident. As the divine official of Tiandu, I will certainly enforce the law impartially. Today, I will kill these divine generals one by one, and I will certainly give 2 spiritual sons an explanation. Rumble! Divine official Tiandu erupted with supreme power and raised his 5 fingers. Obviously, he was going to kill Divine General Baizhe and the others in the next moment, and completely used them as scapegoats to settle this matter. They were just a few dozen divine generals of the lowest level. Killing them was the best solution. Divine official Tiandu did not offend either side, and gave the two spiritual sons a way out. It was indeed a perfect solution. Unfortunately, divine official Tiandu did not expect that everything he was doing was within Yi Xian's calculations. Divine official, please spare our lives. We are innocent. The complexions of divine general Bai Zhe and the others changed greatly. They kowtowed to the divine priest of Tiandu in a trembling voice, pleading with him. But the resentment and unwillingness in their eyes turned into endless sorrow and despair. They were just divine generals, the lowest existence in the 10,000 Spirit Palace. They were powerless to resist divine official Tiandu. You should be executed for your crimes. Divine official Tiandu roared coldly. His 5 fingers were about to fall. But before he could really make a move, a loud roar suddenly sounded. Stop! Qi! Yi Xian suddenly stood in front of Divine General Bai Zhe and the others and looked coldly at Divine Official Tiandu. Ninth Spiritual Son, what do you mean? Divine Official Tiandu's face changed slightly. He did not know why Yi Xian stood in front of these Divine Generals. Divine General Bai Zhe and the others are my friends. Besides, this matter has nothing to do with them. How can I allow you to kill them? Yi Xian said righteously. Ninth Spiritual Son, what did you say? You are friends with these divine generals? Divine Official Tiandu asked in surprise. He could not believe his ears. It should be known that these divine generals were the lowest existence in the 10,000 Spirit Palace. At this moment, Yi Xian actually called them friends. This was simply an insult to his identity as Ninth Spiritual Son. You want to kill my friends? Have you asked me? Yi Xian said coldly. Spiritual Son? At this moment, Divine General Bai Zhe and the others were stunned on the spot. They never thought that Yi Xian would actually confront the heavenly capital divine priest for them. At this moment, their eyes started to turn red and tears flickered in them. If it was said that Divine General Bai Zhe and the others only had a good impression of Yi Xian, then today's scene had truly moved them to the extreme. They were only lowly divine generals, so how could they be worthy of Yi Xian saving them? At this moment, every single one of the divine generals clenched their fists tightly as they looked at Yi Xian's back with an extremely resolute expression. In their hearts, they made a decision that they wouldn't regret for the rest of their lives. At this moment, Gai Tianyuan witnessed all this with his own eyes. He could not describe his feelings at this moment. He only wanted to bow 3 times to Yi Xian and say the word respect to Yi Xian. Gai Tianyuan finally knew what it meant to win people's hearts. He also finally saw how brilliant Yi Xian's means were. He only designed a simple plan to make these divine generals loyal to him at this moment. Amazing! What an amazing boy! Not to mention whether he has a mortal body or not. And not to mention whether he can become the strongest of all time in the future. He will definitely be one of the top figures in the chaotic universe with his skill of controlling people. Gai Tianyuan praised from the bottom of his heart. He was completely convinced by Yi Xian. A trace of expectation rose in his heart that even he did not understand. At this moment, Divine Official Tiandu's face turned red. He could not understand Yi Xian's behavior of protecting these divine generals. This was clearly the best solution, but the other party did not know how to appreciate his kindness. I am enforcing the law impartially. Does Ninth Spiritual Son really want to stop me? Divine Official Tiandu's voice turned cold. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. This matter has nothing to do with these divine generals. If you want to harm them, you have to do it over my dead body, Yi Xian said coldly. Divine Official Tiandu was angry in the face of Yi Xian's strength, but he did not dare to show it. After all, the person behind Yi Xian was the Purple Spirit Holy Emissary. Phew! Divine Official Tiandu slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. The coldness on his face gradually disappeared, replaced by a calm look. Since Ninth Spiritual Son has pleaded for them, I will give them a chance. However, I also hope that the 2 spiritual sons can bury the hatchet, Divine Official Tiandu said in a deep voice. Okay, I will give you face and let today's matter go. Yi Xian had achieved his goal, and did not want to continue to make things difficult for Tuoba Tian. Naturally, there was no need to refuse. In fact, everything that happened today was within Yi Xian's calculations. He first framed Tuoba Tian, then came to make a big deal out of it, and attracted the people of divine official Tiandu court. According to Yi Xian's calculations, he and Tuoba Tian were spirit sons, so they definitely wouldn't be punished too much. As for Divine General Bai Zhe and the others, they were the patrolling divine generals of this area, so they would definitely become the scapegoats for this incident. Then, Yi Xian would come forward to protect Bai Zhe and the others. This could completely buy people's hearts. To put it bluntly, Yi Xian was not so bored as to find trouble with Tuoba Tian. He would either not do anything, or he would definitely kill Tuoba Tian. Today's matter was just to buy Bai Zhe and the others. Tuoba Tian coldly snorted. He flung his sleeves and returned to the 10th Spirit Hall with large strides. He didn't want to say anything ruthless. Although he hated Yi Xian to death in his heart, Yi Xian had already stopped. Naturally, he wouldn't continue to provoke him. Since today's matter has been resolved, I will take my leave. However, I would like to ask 9th Spiritual Son to send my regards to Purple Spirit Saint Emissary. Divine Official Tiandu's meaning was clear. He was giving 9th Spiritual Son face today, because of Purple Spirit Saint Emissary. As Divine Official Tiandu turned into a rainbow light and left, the farce that Yi Xian had orchestrated finally came to an end. However, Bai Zhe and the others had tears in their eyes as they knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Yi Xian. Spiritual Son, I will never forget your kindness. Divine General Bai Zhe's voice was choked with sobs. Brother Bai, what are you doing? Get up quickly. Yi Xian hurriedly helped everyone up, which made Bai Zhe and the others even more touched. However, patrolling Divine General is indeed a bit too tiring. I would like to invite you all to the 9th Spiritual Hall, to be my personal bodyguards. I wonder if you are willing? Yi Xian pretended to sigh and said, We are willing. How can we not be willing? Even if we work like cows and horses for you, we will not be able to repay your kindness. Divine General Bai Zhe hurriedly said, Spiritual Son, we all want to follow you. However, if we want to be your personal bodyguards, we need the permission of the Divine General Pavilion. A Divine General wanted to say something but stopped. Chapter 12:14. You don't have to worry about this. I will inform the Divine General Pavilion to bring you here, Yi Xian said with a smile. Thank you, Lingzi. The dozens of Divine Generals were overjoyed and hurriedly bowed to Yi Xian again. However, before they could do so, Yi Xian gently waved his sleeve and stopped them. From now on, we are all brothers. There is no need for such formalities, Yi Xian said solemnly. The more amiable Yi Xian was, the more moved Divine General Bai Zhe and the others were. Although they did not bow to Yi Xian again, their eyes were full of respect. What happened next was very simple. Yi Xian led everyone back to the 9th Spiritual Palace and informed the Divine General Pavilion. Naturally, the Divine General Pavilion did not dare to offend Yi Xian. Bai Zhe and the dozens of Divine Generals also officially became Yi Xian's personal guards. The 9th Spiritual Palace. Yi Xian sat on the main seat, while Divine General Bai Zhe and the others sat on both sides of the palace. Everyone looked excited. This cup of wine is for my brothers. From now on, if anyone bullies you, they will be bullying me, the 9th Lingzi. Yi Xian drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. Bai Zhe and the others looked excited as they drank the wine in their cups together. We are merely Divine Generals. It is our fortune to be valued so highly by the Spiritual Son. Bai Zhe swears that he will never betray you. Otherwise, he will be struck by lightning, and his soul will scatter. Bai Zhe took the lead and made the vow. The rest of the Divine Generals followed suit. Yi Xian's eyes flashed with a touch of satisfaction. It was easy to take Bai Zhe and the others into the 9th Spiritual Palace. However, he valued their loyalty the most. Only loyal people could be used by him. For a moment, Yi Xian kept toasting, and the entire 9th Spiritual Palace became very lively. The banquet only ended when the dozens of Divine Generals drank, until their faces were red. As the Divine Generals left, Bai Zhe cleverly stayed behind. This was because he was the big brother of this group of divine generals. This time, after becoming Yi Xian's guard, he would definitely have a long chat with Yi Xian. Lingzi. Bai Zai bowed deeply to Yi Xian. Brother Bai, I said that you don't need to be so polite. You and I are brothers. Yi Xian said with a smile. No, you're a spiritual son, and we're immortal generals. As the saying goes, there's a difference in status. We can't break the rules. Bai Zai quickly refused. Yi Xian slowly nodded as he looked at Bai Zai's solemn expression. He admired Bai Zai even more. Bai Zai wasn't stupid. He didn't become arrogant because of Yi Xian's easygoing attitude. This showed that Bai Zai was someone who knew when to advance and when to retreat. It was no wonder that he was the big brother of these divine generals. All right. You can call me Lingzi in front of others. However, we can still call each other brothers in private. Yi Xian said. Thank you, Brother Yao. Bai Zai's face brightened. Brother Bai, I see that your cultivation is at the 9th heavenly layer of small saint realm. You are only a step away from stepping into the great saint realm. Here is a primary spirit pill. It should be able to help you. Yi Xian took out a pill and handed it to Bai Zai. Bai Zai couldn't refuse it at all. Yi Xian was indeed a shrewd person when it came to dealing with people. Although loyalty was important, only practical benefits were the benchmark to maintain loyalty. Only when rewards and punishments were appropriate could one be considered a qualified leader. This was also thanks to Yi Xian, ruling the entire celestial court in the 3 realms. This also allowed him to learn how to be a qualified leader. I really don't know how to repay Lingzi. Bai Zai held the primary spirit pill. His face was slightly red as he spat out such a sentence. Actually, I really do have something that I need to trouble Brother Bai with. Yi Xian pretended to hesitate before finally speaking. No matter what it is, even if I have to risk my life, Bai Zai will definitely do it for Lingzi. Bai Zai hurriedly said, All right. I don't treat Brother Bai as an outsider. Then, I will tell you the truth. Yi Xian let out a long sigh. Brother Bai should know that the 5th Lingzi, Ji Yinyang, has a deep grudge with me. Now, he doesn't dare to act rashly because of sacred emissary purple spirit. However, if there is a chance, he will definitely attack me. Yi Xian pretended to be serious. Lingzi, you mean? Bai Zai probed. Alas! Yi Xian let out a long sigh and said, I know that Brother Bai has a very high status among the divine generals. Many divine generals of the 5th Spirit Palace must be familiar with you. I want to ask these divine generals to do something for me. Therefore, I have to trouble Brother Bai. If it were before, Bai Zai would definitely refuse Yi Xian. However, at this moment he was loyal to Yi Xian. Yi Xian's troubles were his troubles. How could he sit back and do nothing? Lingzi, don't worry. Just tell me what you need me to do. I am very close to the divine generals of the 5th Spirit Palace. Even if it is to assassinate Ji Yinyang, I will definitely do it. Bai Zai said in a deep voice. No, Brother Bai misunderstood me. Even I am no match for Ji Yinyang. Even if Brother Bai is willing to be a death warrior, you will lose your life in vain. Moreover, it is not my intention to put Brother Bai in danger. Yi Xian quickly shook his head and said, Then Lingzi, you mean? Bai Zai was a little confused. He didn't know what Yi Xian wanted him to do. Poison him. Yi Xian was silent for 3 breaths. Finally, he slowly spat out these 2 words. A sinister light flashed across his eyes. Poison him. Bai Zai was stunned. Then, he instantly understood Yi Xian's intention. However, this made him frown. Apparently, this matter was a little difficult to deal with. Yes, poison him. You know that the 12 spiritual sons are not allowed to fight. This is also the rule of the 10,000 Spirit Palace. Even if I fight Ji Yinyang, I am no match for him. Therefore, this is the only way. Yi Xian said in a gloomy voice. Lingzi, you mean to let the divine generals of the 5th Spirit Palace poison Ji Yinyang's food to take his life? Bai Zai asked in a trembling voice. Yes. Yi Xian nodded slowly and directly admitted it. Fortunately, Bai Zai wasn't a pedantic person. He knew that if Ji Yinyang didn't die, he would attack Yi Xian sooner or later. This was not the result he wanted to see. However, Bai Zai frowned slightly and said, Lingzi, Ji Yinyang has the chaotic Yinyang battle body. Moreover, He is already cultivated to the creation realm. I'm afraid that poisoning him won't have much effect on him. Moreover, this matter requires the divine generals of the Fifth Spirit Palace to do it. There is a great risk involved. I can't guarantee that the divine generals of the Fifth Spirit Palace will agree. Hearing Bai Zai's words, Yi Xian smiled slightly, as if he had already expected this situation. Brother Bai, don't worry. I will find a poison that can kill Ji Yinyang. As long as this matter is done, I will naturally protect the divine generals of the Fifth Spirit Palace. I will also take them into the Ninth Spirit Palace and reward them handsomely, Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Okay, I will do it now. Bai Zai wasn't one to talk nonsense. He had received great kindness from Yi Xian, so he would naturally do anything to repay it. Moreover, Yi Xian trusted him so much. This meant that Yi Xian truly regarded him as a trusted aide. Bai Zai quickly left the Ninth Spirit Palace. Clearly, he was going to do this matter. Looking at Bai Zai's departing figure, Yi Xian's lips curled into a vicious smile. All his plans were proceeding in an orderly manner. All he needed was an opportunity to completely eliminate Ji Yinyang, that damn transvestite. Brat, you're really vicious. Suddenly, Gai Tianyuan's voice rang in Yi Xian's ears. Vicious? Aha! Yi Xian smiled. His smile was very cold. I can tell you that I despise such methods. However, as we are in the 10,000 Spirit Palace, I can't really use my full strength to kill Ji Yinyang. This is the only thing I can do, Yi Xian said coldly. Chapter 12:15. It had to be said that Bai Zai was very efficient. In just 3 days he had brought back a person. This person was called Wu Liang, the divine general in charge of the Fifth Spiritual Palace. He was in charge of dozens of divine generals and immortal soldiers. Wu Liang was just like his name. He was extremely ugly, and he acted like a villain when he did things. It could be said that with his appearance, it would be difficult for him to survive among the divine generals. However, he was good at flattery and treated his divine generals and immortal soldiers very well. Ji Yinyang was a Yinyang person and did not have many requirements for his appearance. This was why Wu Liang became the divine general of the Fifth Spiritual Palace. Of course, even though Wu Liang was a shameless villain, he had friends. His only friend was Bai Zai. The two of them had been through life and death together. Greetings, Ninth Spiritual Son. When Bai Zai quietly brought this person into the Ninth Spiritual Palace, Wu Liang bowed his head and kowtowed to Yi Xian. He even lowered his posture to the extreme. You are Bai Zai's brother. That makes you my brother. Get up. Yi Xian said with a smile. Thank you, Spiritual Son. Wu Liang quickly got up and looked at Yi Xian. However, when he saw Yi Xian's deep eyes, Wu Liang's heart suddenly tightened. This person is not simple. In an instant, this sentence flashed across Wu Liang's mind. Although Wu Liang's cultivation was not high, he was very good at reading people's expressions. With just a glance at Yi Xian, he was very sure that the Ninth Spiritual Son standing in front of him was not simple. Not simple was not referring to Yi Xian's cultivation, but Yi Xian's eyes. His eyes were deep and reserved, and contained a look that made his heart palpitate. This also showed that this Ninth Spiritual Son was very shrewd, and was definitely not an ordinary person. Spiritual Son, you guys talk. I will take my leave for now. Bai Zai was someone who knew when to advance and when to retreat. He bowed to Yi Xian and strode out of the Ninth Spirit Hall, leaving only Yi Xian and Wu Liang in the Ninth Spirit Hall. Bai Zai must have told you everything, right? Yi Xian looked at Wu Liang indifferently as Bai Zai left. A deep light flashed through his eyes. There was an old saying that a person's eyes were the window to the soul. Yi Xian could tell at a glance that Wu Liang was different from Bai Zai. He was an extremely cunning person. To be honest, Yi Xian could not help but sigh at the fact that an honest and loyal person would actually become friends with a scheming and cunning person. I already know everything. Wu Liang nodded slowly, but there was a hint of hesitation in his eyes. You're a smart person. I don't want to say too much. As long as you complete this task, I won't mistreat you, Yi Xian said calmly. Can I refuse? Wu Liang smiled bitterly. There was deep helplessness in his eyes. He wasn't Bai Zai, and he didn't have any so-called loyalty to Yi Xian. When Baizé told him about this matter, his original intention was to refuse. However, Baizé had begged him, so he had no choice but to come to the ninth spirit hall. From the bottom of his heart, he didn't want to do this at all. The fifth spiritual son, Ji Yinyang, was an existence that he could never hope to reach. Asking him to poison him was no different from courting death. Of course you can refuse, Yixian said calmly. Spiritual son, please understand. This matter is of great importance. I am only a little divine general. I really don't dare to get involved. However, spiritual son, you can rest assured that I will keep this matter to myself and never speak of it. Wu Liang bowed, turned around and walked out of the hall. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 9 steps. When Wu Liang took his 9th step, he would leave the 9th spirit hall as soon as he stepped through the door. However, at this moment, his footsteps suddenly came to a halt. He was rooted to the spot. Suddenly, after 3 breaths, Wu Liang slowly turned around. However, his face was filled with helplessness. He walked towards Yixian again. Why aren't you leaving? Yixian was not surprised at all. Instead, he looked at Wu Liang indifferently. Wu Liang smiled bitterly and shook his head. Spiritual son, you must be joking. If I had really taken that last step, I would have become a missing person in the next moment. I just said that you're a smart person. It looks like I wasn't wrong, Yixian smiled. Spiritual son, you're the one with great wisdom. I'm not worthy of your praise. Wu Liang shook his head bitterly. In fact, it was just as Wu Liang had said. If he had really walked out of the 9th spirit hall, the only outcome for him would be death. This was because in Yixian's creed, only the dead could keep secrets. I really like to deal with smart people. You're very smart. As long as you're loyal to me, you'll get whatever you want. Yixian smiled gently. Wu Liang kowtows to spiritual son. From now on, I will recognize you as my master. I will never betray you. If I violate this oath, my soul will scatter and I will die. Wu Liang knelt on the ground and solemnly kowtowed 3 times to Yixian. He even swore a heart demon oath. Perhaps some people would question why Wu Liang would so easily pledge his loyalty to Yixian. The reason was very simple. This was where Wu Liang was smart. This was because he knew that his only choice was to pledge his loyalty to Yixian. Otherwise, he would only end up dead. This was because Wu Liang could sense that Yixian was a vicious person. This was where he was truly smart. If he didn't swear a heart demon oath to pledge his loyalty to Yixian, Yixian would never be at ease with him. This was why Yixian really liked dealing with smart people. This saved him a lot of effort. Baizé was different from Wu Liang. Baizé was an honest person. Yixian could only show him kindness to achieve Baizé's goal of pledging his loyalty to him. Come find me here in 7 days. You can leave now, Yixian said indifferently. Yes, spiritual son. Wu Liang hurriedly stood up and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He then hurriedly left the 9th spirit hall. This person is clearly a despicable person. He won't be loyal to you. Aren't you afraid that he'll leak the secret to Ji Yinyang? Gai Tianyuan reminded him. He wouldn't dare because he's afraid of death. This kind of person is the best weapon in my hands. It's much more comfortable to use him than Baizé. Yixian smiled slightly. I've already done what I need to do. The final step is up to you, Yixian reminded him. I do have the poison you want. It's called the 10,000 poison powder. It's colorless and odorless. It's extremely insidious. However, you'll have to find the ingredients to make it yourself, Gai Tianyuan said in a deep voice. There's a Medicine King Pavilion in the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. It can definitely make the 10,000 poison powder. Yixian smiled. Medicine King Pavilion? This place was an important place in the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. Not only did it contain countless spiritual items, but it was also rumored to be a chaotic sacred medicine that could allow one to enter the yin-yang realm after consuming it. Chapter 12:16. Of course, this was only a rumor. Yixian wasn't sure if it was true. Even if there was such a sacred herb, it would be heavily guarded. No one could easily obtain it. Another responsibility of the Medicine King Pavilion was to distribute pills to the disciples of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Therefore, It was an extremely important place for the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. When Yi Xian arrived at the Medicine King Pavilion, he attracted the attention of many disciples. After all, Yi Xian was Purple Spirit's sworn brother. This made Yi Xian famous. What kind of spiritual item do you want? As Yi Xian arrived at the Medicine King Pavilion, a Dao child came to receive him. Yi Xian naturally couldn't show the Dao child the poison recipe. Instead, he told the Dao child that he wanted to concoct some spiritual herbs, and that he could just bring him to the Essence Spirit Garden. Essence Spirit Garden. Countless spiritual herbs were planted here. From time to time, disciples of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace could be seen picking them. Of course, not everyone could enter the Essence Spirit Garden. Only disciples of the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace were allowed to enter. Furthermore, the age of the spiritual herbs could be picked was marked according to their merits. Fortunately, as the ninth spirit son, Yi Xian was extremely noble. Other than some precious spirit medicines, most of the spirit medicines could be harvested by him. You can pick spiritual herbs for 2 hours. After 2 hours you need to leave. Remember that. The guard of the Essence Spirit Garden was a white-haired old man. His eyes were closed as if he was resting. He reminded Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at the old man. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. Obviously, the old man's cultivation was very high. He had probably stepped into the yin-yang realm. However, Yi Xian was relieved after the surprise. The 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace was in charge of the 10th Yuan Hui. Its foundation was naturally unimaginable. Yi Xian strode into the Essence Spirit Garden. A wave of spiritual energy immediately rushed towards him. Looking around, it was a sea of spiritual herbs. As expected, he's rich and imposing. Looking at the boundless Spirit Essence Garden, even Yi Xian, who had a calm temperament, couldn't help but sigh. Just the Spirit Essence Garden before him could create countless disciples with terrifying cultivation. After Yi Xian sighed, he began to search for the spirit essence he needed according to the poison recipe. Fortunately, this Spirit Essence Garden was all-encompassing, and every spirit essence had a conspicuous mark, which allowed him to quickly find what he needed. Celestial Lingji Mushroom, Burial Ground Flower, Three-Eyed Toad Grass, Cyan Cloudy Fruit. Some spirit essences that were extremely difficult to find in the outside world were all available here. In just an hour, Yi Xian had collected all the spirit essences needed to concoct the 10,000 poisons powder. Only the last type of Yuan Ling grass was left. So it's here. As Yi Xian went deeper into the Spirit Essence Garden, he saw a faint light in front of him. It was filled with Yuan Ling grass. This caused Yi Xian's eyes to brighten as he strode towards this place. Yuan Ling grass was the main ingredient for the 10,000 poisons powder. Ordinary ones naturally wouldn't work. At the very least, one would need 100,000 years old Yuan Ling grass to concoct the 10,000 poisons powder. Fortunately, there was indeed a 100,000-year-old Yuan Ling grass swaying in the wind. Yi Xian reached out his hand and was about to pick it, but at this time, a delicate voice came from behind him. Stop. Yi Xian's eyes widened in surprise because he didn't notice that someone had appeared behind him. It was obvious that this person's cultivation was clearly higher than his. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and saw a young girl wearing a yellow dress looking at him with a cold expression. A strand of golden light was revolving around her body. It's you? When she saw Yi Xian's face, the yellow-robed girl was stunned. The terrifying golden light around her slowly dissipated. You are the fourth spirit lady Nangong Xiener? Yi Xian was very sure that he knew this girl. However, he had already learned the various characteristics of the 12 spirit children from Yao Yueya. The girl standing in front of him was obviously the fourth spirit lady, Nangong Xiener, the so-called 12 spirit children of the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace, was actually just a general name. Not only were there men, but there were also women. This fourth spirit lady, Nangong Xiener, was an extremely difficult existence to deal with. She was a terrifying woman ranked above Ji Yinyang. Mysterious yellow war physique. Nangong Xiener had the mysterious yellow war physique that was 1 in a billion. She was definitely the most dazzling genius of the younger generation. She was also a disciple that the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace focused on nurturing. However, Yi Xian did not expect that he would actually encounter the fourth spirit lady here. Moreover, from the way she berated him just now, it was obvious that she was also here for the 100,000-year-old yuan dispersing immortal grass. So it's little Jiao. Could it be that you are also here to pick the 100,000-year-old yuan dispersing immortal grass? Nangong Xian calmed down and said, That's right. Yi Xian slowly nodded. Yi Xian learned from Yao Yuya that Nangong Xian and Yao Yuya did not have any interactions. They had only met a few times. It seems that no one told you that I have already reserved this 100,000-year-old yuan dispersing immortal grass. You can leave now. Nangong Xian frowned and said, I didn't expect that the fourth spirit lady's other identity is actually a heaven patrolling spirit envoy. Naturally, I don't dare to compete with a heaven patrolling spirit envoy for this item. Yi Xian smiled and did not say anything else. He strode out of this place. Before Yi Xian could leave, Nangong Xian's expression changed and she instantly blocked Yi Xian's path. She looked at Yi Xian with an extremely shocked expression. What did you just say? Nangong Xian asked in a deep voice. I didn't expect you to be so forgetful. How long has it been? You and I just met in Stardew City. Could it be that you have forgotten? Yi Xian said with a strange smile. Impossible. How did you know my identity? Nangong Xian exclaimed in shock. One had to know that the secret of her being a heaven patrolling spirit envoy was only known to elders. Moreover, that day in Stardew City, Yi Xian and Tuobatian were fighting. She only appeared to stop them, and her entire body was covered by golden armor. How did he discover her true identity? You don't need to know this. Yi Xian smiled mysteriously and strode out of this place. Here. Suddenly, Nangong Xian plucked the yuan dissolving immortal grass and threw it to Yi Xian. Yi Xian also put it in his bag. I don't care how you know my secret. I don't want you to spread this matter. This yuan ling grass is yours, Nangong Xian said coldly. Thank you. Yi Xian lightly smiled. He didn't spare Nangong Xian another glance as he leisurely strolled away. Looking at Yi Xian's back, Nangong Xian frowned and muttered. This Yao Yuya is definitely not simple. It seems that I have underestimated him. But it's really strange. This yuan ling grass is an item of extreme yin. It has no use for concocting spirit pills. Why does he want this item? Although Nangong Xian was a woman, she was extremely meticulous. Moreover, as a heaven patrolling spirit envoy, she had the authority to supervise. She naturally had doubts about Yi Xian. However, Nangong Xian didn't think too much about it. It was just a yuan ling grass. She was extremely curious about Yi Xian. She couldn't understand how Yi Xian knew that she was a heaven patrolling spirit envoy. Chapter 12:17. Everything was ready, except for the east wind. After returning to the ninth spirit hall, Yi Xian placed all the spiritual items together, with a hint of cruel excitement in his eyes. Just the spiritual items in his hands were enough to produce a large amount of 10,000 poison powder. However, he didn't expect to meet Nangong Xian during the trip to the Medicine King Pavilion. He also knew that Nangong Xian's other identity was a Sky Patrol Spirit Envoy. Sky Patrol Spirit Envoys were responsible for inspecting, which could be said to be an extremely offensive job. Therefore, every Sky Patrol Spirit Envoy was covered in golden armor, and outsiders didn't know their true identity. Therefore, Nangong Xian used a 100,000-year-old yuan ling grass to shut Yi Xian's mouth, hoping that Yi Xian would keep her secret. However, this wasn't important to Yi Xian. After all, he didn't have much interaction with Nangong Xian. The most important thing at this moment was to kill Ji Yinyang and completely eliminate this potential threat. 7 days later, Wu Liang came to the ninth spirit hall in the middle of the night and took a portion of 10,000 poison powder from Yi Xian. The two of them secretly plotted for a long time before Wu Liang left quietly. Everything was proceeding in an orderly manner, and it was completely according to Yi Xian's expectations. He was only waiting for the right time to take Ji Yinyang's life. Of course, Yi Xian was a person who never left any trouble behind. He would either not make a move, or he would definitely eliminate the source of trouble and leave no one alive. On the other side, during this period of time, Ji Yinyang could be said to be cultivating his body and mind. Apart from cultivating every day, he rarely went out, let alone find trouble with Yi Xian. After all, he couldn't afford to offend Purple Spirit at this moment, and he didn't dare to have any ideas about Yi Xian for the time being. However, Ji Yinyang had already thought of a way. Wu Liang, when will the second spirit child come out of seclusion? Ji Yinyang stopped his breathing and slowly opened his eyes to look at Wu Liang. His voice was slightly sharp and ear-piercing. There is still half a year before the second spirit child comes out of seclusion. Wu Liang quickly bowed and replied, "All right." Ji Yinyang's eyes lit up, and a sinister smile appeared on his face. He murmured, Little nine, I can't afford to offend Saint Emissary Purple Spirit. But do you think this matter is over? When the second spiritual son comes out, even Purple Spirit won't be able to protect you." Ji Yinyang sneered, as if he had thought of something extremely exciting. His whole body exuded a gloomy aura. But standing next to Ji Yinyang, Divine General Wu Liang lowered his eyes, a harsh glint flashing in his eyes that he concealed very well. Time passed in a blink of an eye. Half a year passed quickly. During this half a year, Ji Yinyang had not taken a single step out of the fifth spirit hall, except for his daily cultivation. Yi Xian had also spent half a year in peace. Ji Yinyang was waiting for the second spiritual son to come out, and Yi Xian was also waiting for an opportunity to kill Ji Yinyang. Yi Xian was not in a hurry. He was a very patient person, because once he took action, he would kill his opponent, and would never give his enemy any chance to turn the tables. Speaking of which, people with Ji Yinyang's cultivation level basically did not eat. They usually cultivated by absorbing spiritual qi and elixirs. They no longer had any appetite for food, which was why Wu Liang had not found an opportunity. But Wu Liang was not in a hurry. He was very patient because he believed that there would always be an opportunity to complete the task given to him by Yi Xian. It was only a matter of time. Soon the opportunity came, and it was delivered by Ji Yinyang himself. One day, half a year later, when Ji Yinyang learned that the second spiritual son would come out of seclusion the next day, he ordered Wu Liang to gather Tuobatian and the others, so that he could personally welcome the second spiritual son. Wu Liang, who received the order, knew that his opportunity had come. The fifth spirit hall. It was brightly lit and filled with spiritual qi. Dozens of divine generals were patrolling outside the fifth spirit hall, while Wu Liang shuttled back and forth from time to time, playing the role of a servant. Inside the hall, a few white jade tables were filled with spiritual fruits and divine wine. There were even maids dancing in the hall. The sound of the zither and the zither rippled, making the entire fifth spirit hall extremely lively. Ji Yinyang was at the head, and below him were the three spiritual sons, Xia Wuyuan and Tuobatian. The four of them had smiles on their faces, and were chatting enthusiastically. "Fifth brother, that bastard Yao Yuye is too much of a bully. This time, we must kill him to appease the hatred in my heart." Tuobatian said with hatred, "Little ninth is too arrogant. It's fine if he doesn't put us in his eyes, but he doesn't even put fifth brother in his eyes. This time, he must die without a burial ground." Xia Wuyuan agreed coldly. Little ninth thinks that he can be lawless with the support of Purple Spirit Sage Emissary. Wait until tomorrow, we must teach him a lesson. 11th spiritual son Li Shuren sneered. Ha ha ha. Ji Yinyang covered his mouth and laughed. However, his laughter was extremely cold, giving people goosebumps. Although little nine deserves to die 10,000 times for his crimes, I can't bear to kill him. He's a good furnace. Fifth brother is right. Killing him would be too easy for him. Let him become fifth brother's concubine. Wouldn't that be perfect? Ha ha ha. The three spiritual sons laughed loudly. Their words were filled with hatred towards Yi Xian. Alright, today, let us brothers drink together. Tomorrow, we will welcome the second spiritual son out of seclusion. Then, we will find little ninth to settle the score. Ji Yinyang chuckled. The four of them raised their cups and drank it. The entire fifth spiritual palace was filled with their laughter. What the four of them didn't know was that when Wu Liang saw the four of them drinking the wine in their cups, a gloomy look flashed across his eyes. He quietly left the fifth spiritual palace. Toasting each other and talking loudly, the three spiritual sons flattered Ji Yinyang. Time passed by little by little. The moonlight was hazy, and the sky was filled with stars. Just as the four of them were drinking in high spirits, a series of light footsteps came from outside the palace. However, this didn't alert the four of them. They only thought it was the patrolling divine general. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, a burst of applause came and broke the four of them talking loudly. This also made the four of them look towards the source of the sound. Everyone is in such a good mood. Why didn't you call out to this spiritual son for drinking? Yi Xian was dressed in black, and 3,000 strands of hair hung behind his head. With every step he took, the hair that scattered behind his head lightly fluttered in the wind, making him look even more mysterious and profound. However, at this moment, the entire fifth spiritual palace was silent. The divine general and divine soldier, who was patrolling the fifth spiritual palace, had also disappeared. Little ninth. When he saw the person who came, Ji Yinyang was stunned. His thoughts were somewhat stagnant. He never thought that Yi Xian would appear at this moment. Yao Yueya, how dare you trespass into the fifth spiritual palace? Bang! Tuoba Tian slammed the table and glared at Yi Xian. However, a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. He felt that Yi Xian's appearance was very strange. They didn't notice him at all. Chapter 12:18. Since you're here, there's no need to leave. This saves us the trouble of finding you personally. Xiao Wuyuan's expression was cold, and a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. Little nine, I have to say that you have guts. Fifth brother hasn't gone to find you, and you've delivered yourself to our doorstep. Do you really want to die? Ji Yinyang had already regained his senses. He stared coldly at Yi Xian, but he didn't make a move immediately. You're wrong. I'm not the one who wants to die. You guys should be the ones dying today. Yi Xian's expression was calm, and his voice echoed in the hall. Ji Yinyang was definitely a scheming person. When he saw Yi Xian's fearless attitude, an extremely bad feeling rose in his heart. Tisk tsk tsk. Yi Xian curled his lips and said, Actually, I didn't want to kill you guys, but you guys kept trying to harm me. It's just like the old saying. A man has no intention to hurt a tiger, but the tiger wants to hurt a man's heart. Of course, you guys aren't tigers in my eyes. At most, you guys are just cats. However, I really hate being secretly targeted by you guys. So after thinking about it, I feel that it's better to kill you guys to get some peace. You want to kill us? You? Boom. The eighth spiritual son, Xiao Wuyuan, suddenly stood up. An extremely violent murderous intent surged out, and an extremely terrifying holy light circulated around his body. It was obvious that he was going to attack Yi Xian in the next moment. Wah! Suddenly, just as Xiao Wuyuan was about to make a move, the holy light on his body suddenly shattered, and a mouthful of black blood spurted out from his mouth. The extremely terrifying aura on his body instantly dissipated, and he staggered backward. Eighth brother? Little eight. The two spiritual sons and Ji Yinyang spoke in shock, but in the next moment, their bodies trembled, and a stream of black blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. He poisoned us. Xiao Wuyuan trembled and roared. He looked at Yi Xian furiously. He really couldn't understand when he was poisoned, and what kind of poison was so powerful that even he didn't notice it. Colorless, odorless, and able to injure one's primordial spirit. Could it be the legendary myriad poison powder? Suddenly, Ji Yinyang covered his chest with his hand and sat down, looking at Yi Xian with a face full of shock. You damn transvestite, at least you have some knowledge. Since you know about the 10,000 poisons powder, then you should understand its effects. Yi Xian smiled viciously. Little Jiao, hand over the antidote, and the grudges between us can be written off. Ji Yinyang said gloomily, because he knew how terrifying the 10,000 poisons powder was. It was a vicious substance that could harm one's primordial spirit. However, Ji Yinyang was very curious. The formula for the 10,000 poisons powder had long been lost. Where did Yi Xian get it? However, Ji Yinyang didn't want to continue guessing, because he could already feel Yi Xian's extremely vicious killing intent. Antidote. I don't have the antidote. I made the 10,000 poisons powder to take your lives. How could I have the antidote? Yi Xian shook his head, because he really didn't have the antidote. What he said was the truth. Little Jiao, if you really kill us and the Sky Capital Court finds out that it was you who did it, you will be buried with us. Ji Yinyang said sternly. Ji Yinyang, I always thought that you were a character, but now it seems that you're just SOSO. Since I'm already prepared to kill you, do you think I'll be afraid of the so-called Sky Capital Court? Yi Xian smiled viciously. You want to kill us? I'll kill you first. Rumble. Xiao Wuyuan roared ferociously and charged towards Yi Xian. Obviously, he didn't want to sit still and wait for death. He wanted to defeat Yi Xian in the shortest time possible, and then escape from the 5th Spirit Hall to the Medicine King Pavilion, because there would definitely be a spirit medicine that could save him. You're really an idiot. Boom. Yi Xian took a step forward, and instantly appeared in front of Xiao Wuyuan. His 5 fingers were like pillars that supported the sky as they pressed down on Xiao Wuyuan's head with a terrifying force. Die. Crack. Yi Xian smiled cruelly, and actually twisted Xiao Wuyuan's head off. The headless corpse fell to the ground with blood spurting out. The scene was extremely brutal. Bang! Yi Xian casually threw Xiao Wuyuan's head to the ground and stomped on it, directly destroying Xiao Wuyuan's body and soul. Hiss! Such a terrifying scene immediately made Tuo Batian and Li Xian gasp. The two of them originally wanted to attack, but they didn't expect Xiao Wuyuan to end up with his head separated from his body. You're really pitifully weak. Bang! Yi Xian kicked Xiao Wuyuan's headless corpse under his feet, and didn't even leave an intact corpse for him. Then, he walked towards Tuo Batian and Li Xian with large strides, the vicious expression on his face becoming even more intense. Ninth brother, please spare my life. Ninth brother, please spare my life. I never wanted to harm you. I was forced by Ji Yinyang. Looking at Yi Xian walking towards him with a face full of murderous intent, Li Xian was so frightened that his saint soul trembled. He knelt down with a plop and pleaded with Yi Xian in a sorrowful voice. A spiritual son who is afraid of death isn't considered a good spiritual son. How can you survive in this cruel world if you're so afraid of death? Yi Xian sneered sinisterly and attacked directly. He smashed Li Xian's head into pieces with a slap and killed the so-called 11th spiritual son. You. Looking at the 2 spiritual sons who died tragically on the spot, Tuo Batian's entire body quivered. He kept retreating, and his teeth were chattering. He looked at Yi Xian with an extremely terrified expression. Are you afraid? TSK. Yi Xian frowned slightly and said, This doesn't seem like your style, Tuo Batian. I remember that you always wanted to kill me. Now that you're so afraid, won't I look down on you? As Yi Xian spoke, his 5 fingers glowed slightly. It was obvious that he was going to kill Tuo Batian in the next moment. This made Tuo Batian's breathing quicken, and his face was extremely pale. Ninth brother, you can't kill me. You really can't kill me. My mother is Elder Yuan Tian's concubine. If you kill me, Elder Yuan Tian will definitely not let you off. As long as you spare my life, from today onwards, Tuo Batian, crack. Without waiting for Tuo Batian to finish speaking, an extremely miserable cry of pain came from his mouth. This was because his neck was already gripped by Yi Xian's 5 fingers, and his entire body was lifted into the air. Those who threaten me are all dead. Since you're so noisy, why don't you just die? But you can rest assured that I'll send you on your way today. When I have the chance, I'll send your mother down to accompany you. Will you be satisfied with this? Yi Xian said viciously. No, rip. Without waiting for Tuo Batian to beg for mercy, Yi Xian twisted his neck and threw Tuo Batian's corpse on the ground like he was throwing rubbish. Bang! Yi Xian kicked Tuo Batian's corpse into pieces, as if he had done something very casual. He then looked at Ji Yinyang with a sinister expression. Chapter 12:19. Little Jiao, do you really want to kill me? Yi Xian had killed 3 people in a row. His methods were cruel and bloody, which made Ji Yinyang's expression extremely gloomy. He realized that he had underestimated Yi Xian. Yi Xian's ruthlessness was no less than his. Don't you think you're talking nonsense? Yi Xian grinned viciously and walked slowly towards Ji Yinyang. A murderous intent overflowed from his body. Obviously, Yi Xian had been preparing for so long to kill Ji Yinyang. Haha! Suddenly Ji Yinyang laughed. His smile was ferocious, and his eyes were cold and sharp. This made Yi Xian's heart tighten, and he suddenly had a bad feeling. Little Jiu, you underestimate me too much. Boom! Suddenly, Ji Yinyang stood up and slapped his 5 fingers towards Yi Xian. The divine light of creation that exploded in the air exploded, and instantly blasted Yi Xian flying. He fiercely smashed into the ground in the distance, and it was unknown if he was dead or alive. Ha ha ha! Ji Yinyang laughed loudly. He walked towards Yi Xian with his hands behind his back. When he arrived in front of Yi Xian, he looked down at Yi Xian in a condescending manner. Little Jiu, the myriad poisons powder is indeed extremely poisonous. It can even harm one's primordial spirit and destroy one's Tao. Even I almost died in your hands. Unfortunately, you don't know the horror of the chaotic yin-yang battle body. In the chaotic world there are 2 souls, yin and yang. Others only have 1 soul, but my chaotic yin-yang battle body has 2 saint souls. One is the yin soul, and the other is the yang soul. Your myriad poisons powder only harmed my yin soul. But then again, I didn't know that you were such a daring person. You're even more scheming. If I didn't have the yin-yang battle body, I'm afraid I would have died in your hands today. Ji Yinyang whispered coldly. Even though he appeared to be calm at the moment, there was still a lingering fear in his heart. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. If he had been the first person Yi Xian wanted to kill, he would have died by now. Fortunately, Yi Xian had killed the 3 spiritual sons first, and he had transferred all of the 10,000 poisons powder to his yin soul. Although his yin soul had suffered great damage, his son's soul had not suffered any damage. Of course, the 10,000 poisons powder was extremely overbearing, and Ji Yinyang was not having it easy either. His yin soul was damaged, and his cultivation had dropped from the 9 heavens Saint King realm. But for Ji Yinyang, this was enough to make him lose control. He could even suppress Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's entire body was smashed into the ground, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. Ji Yinyang, on the other hand, had a smirk on his face. He was confident that his previous attack had severely injured Yi Xian. I really underestimated you. Suddenly, Yi Xian's gloomy voice rang out. His body, which had been smashed into the ground, slowly stood up. When he stood up completely, there were no injuries on his body. Ji Yinyang's expression changed greatly, and he frowned instantly. He looked at Yi Xian with a touch of fear in his eyes. Impossible, how can you be safe and sound? Ji Yinyang said gloomily. He looked at Yi Xian with fear, but he found that Yi Xian did not show any signs of injury. No you. Suddenly, Ji Yinyang's expression changed, and he took 3 steps back. His pair of peach blossom eyes instantly widened, and he stared at Yi Xian, as if he had discovered something incredible. You are not Yao Yue. Ji Yinyang roared in shock. At this moment, Yi Xian's body was surrounded by strands of primal chaos fog, and it wasn't the so-called demon moon battle body at all. Although the other party still had the appearance of Yao Yi, his entire temperament had undergone a tremendous change. You are very smart. I am indeed not Yao Yue, but it is too late for you to know. Yi Xian sneered. He gradually returned to his original appearance, and looked at Ji Yinyang with a murderous look. Looking at the unfamiliar face in front of him, Ji Yinyang's heart trembled. He suddenly pointed at Yi Xian and said, Who are you? Why did you pretend to be Yao Yue? What is your purpose? Who I am is not important. What is important is that you must die today. Rumble! Yi Xian suddenly attacked. At this moment, he completely broke out his cultivation, and directly attacked Ji Yinyang. No matter who you are, I will suppress you today. Ji Yinyang shouted coldly after the shock. After all, he was in the creation realm, and he had the chaotic yin-yang combat body. Although he was poisoned by the 1,000 poisons powder, he could still exert the cultivation of a ninth heaven saint king. Bang! Crack! Ah! Suddenly, when the two of them collided, Ji Yinyang's palm shattered inch by inch, and directly exploded into a cloud of blood missed by Yi Xian. His entire right arm was twisted in an extremely irregular manner, and an extremely tragic cry came from his mouth. Kneel! Whoosh! As Ji Yinyang screamed and retreated, Yi Xian took a step forward, and instantly appeared in front of Ji Yinyang. He stepped out and stomped both of Ji Yinyang's knees into a cloud of blood mist. His 5 fingers suddenly pressed on Ji Yinyang's head. Defeat, a complete and utter defeat. Ji Yinyang did not even last a single round, and was directly suppressed by Yi Xian, completely losing the ability to resist. No, impossible, you, how can you be so strong? Ji Yinyang was completely dumbfounded. He was clearly a ninth heaven saint king, so how could he not even be able to take a single blow from Yi Xian, and be suppressed on the spot? Ji Yinyang could not understand, nor did he dare to think about it, because he could already feel Yi Xian's brutal murderous intent, as if he would be crushed alive in the next moment. In fact, it was not that Ji Yinyang was weak, but that he was completely at a disadvantage, and did not understand Yi Xian's terrifying combat strength. Under such circumstances, he was naturally suppressed by Yi Xian in a single blow. First of all, Ji Yinyang originally had the chaotic yin-yang combat body. Even if he was poisoned and fell from the ninth heaven saint king realm, his combat strength was extremely terrifying. Even if he was not Yi Xian's match, it was impossible for him not to be able to take a single blow. The fundamental reason was that the myriad poison powder had injured his yin soul, and he could not use the power of the chaotic yin-yang combat body at all. On the other hand, although Yi Xian did not use his strongest strength, he had used all of his cultivation, and his physical body was far stronger than Ji Yinyang's. Naturally, Ji Yinyang was not his match. You, who exactly are you? Ji Yinyang's life was hanging by a thread, but he did not beg Yi Xian for mercy. He roared wildly at Yi Xian, because his defeat was too humiliating, and he was extremely unwilling to accept it. Who am I? Yi Xian smiled cruelly, but he did not answer Ji Yinyang's question. Instead, he whispered coldly, "The dead have no right to know my name. If you have a next life, don't ever offend me again." Rumble. Yi Xian's 5 fingers were glowing. As long as he slammed down, Ji Yinyang would completely disappear from the world. Chapter 12:20. You can't kill me. Suddenly Ji Yinyang screamed. His body shook violently. He was about to detonate his physical body. This made Yi Xian's expression change instantly. Retreat. Yi Xian wasn't arrogant. After all, Ji Yinyang was in existence at the creation stage. When he wanted to detonate his body, the power that erupted would definitely cause him to suffer a great calamity. Even if he didn't die, he would still suffer great injuries. Chaos yin and yang, return the soul to heaven and earth. Ji Yinyang roared miserably, and his earth-shaking roar spread out. He exploded into a bloody mist, and the terrifying energy turned the entire 5th spirit hall into ashes. Fortunately, Yi Xian dodged in time, and did not suffer any injuries. However, in the next moment, 2 yin and yang qis shot into the sky. They wanted to escape into the distance. Yi Xian, stop him quickly. These are his yin and yang souls. If you let him escape, your identity will be exposed. Gai Tianyuan shouted in a low voice. He was also reminding Yi Xian. Yi Xian did not need Gai Tianyuan's reminder. He had already attacked. His 5 fingers turned into a giant palm that covered the sky. He slammed it towards the yin and yang souls. Bang! Ah! Ji Yinyang's screams came from the sky. His yin soul had already been devoured by the myriad poisons powder. Now that he was hit by Yi Xian's overbearing attack, his yin soul was instantly shattered and disappeared. I, Ji Yinyang, am not human if I don't take revenge. A wisp of Ji Yinyang's yang soul roared with hatred. Then, it turned into a beam of bright golden light, and continued to flee. From this, it could be seen how terrifying the chaotic yin-yang body was. Even if his yin soul was destroyed, he could still survive. Trying to escape? Yi Xian's face was ferocious. He would never let Ji Yinyang escape. He had to kill him today. Boom! Yi Xian took out his heaven-destroying halberd and slammed it towards Ji Yinyang's yang soul. The black flowing light streaked across the sky and instantly exploded Ji Yinyang's yang soul. Let's go, someone's coming! Before Yi Xian could continue his pursuit, Gai Tianyuan roared anxiously. He could already sense several terrifying auras rushing over. Clearly, Yi Xian's actions had alarmed some of the important figures in the 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace. No, I haven't completely killed him yet. Yi Xian flatly refuted, because his attack had only shattered Ji Yinyang's sun soul. At this moment, Ji Yinyang's sun soul had turned into specks of golden light, and was falling towards the lower realm. It had completely disappeared. Yi Xian had no idea whether Ji Yinyang was dead or not. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late. If the big shots from the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace arrive, we'll definitely be discovered. Gai Tianyuan roared furiously. Yi Xian instantly calmed down and listened to Gai Tianyuan's words. He instantly disappeared from where he stood. Less than 3 breaths of time after Yi Xian left, several figures with terrifying auras appeared, and one of them was Ziling, the 9th spiritual palace. Yi Xian sat down with a gloomy face, exuding an unapproachable aura. Gai Tianyuan, what's the meaning of this? After 3 breaths of time, Yi Xian asked darkly. Yi Xian, are you suspecting me? Gai Tianyuan said unhappily. Suspecting you? Yi Xian sneered. I thought this plan was flawless and would definitely be able to kill Ji Yinyang in one fell swoop. However, it just had to go wrong in the end. Shouldn't I be suspecting you? You never told me that Ji Yinyang had yin and yang souls. If I had known about this, how could he have self-destructed and allowed his souls to escape? Hearing Yi Xian's furious voice, Gai Tianyuan sighed. I didn't expect this Ji Yinyang to be so talented that he could actually cultivate a yin and yang saint soul. That's why I didn't tell you. However, you can rest assured that his yin soul has been destroyed by you, and his yang soul has fallen to the lower realms after being shattered by your halberd. There's no way he can survive, Gai Tianyuan comforted. No way he can survive? Yi Xian murmured darkly. Nothing is impossible. As long as I haven't killed him with my own hands, I won't believe that he's still alive. If it was before, Yi Xian would have believed that Ji Yinyang was dead after witnessing Yi Xian's attack. However, after witnessing Yao Yui's life-saving methods in the Great Southern Dou region, Yi Xian wasn't sure if Ji Yinyang was still alive. The reason was simple. Even the 9th spiritual son Yao Yui had several life-saving methods. So how could the 5th spiritual son, Ji Yinyang, not have any? At this moment, Gai Tianyuan was silent. He also knew that it was his carelessness that led to this situation. It would be fine if Ji Yinyang was dead, but if he wasn't, then he would be a great threat to him and Yi Xian. Yi Xian, if you can't do it, you should leave the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, Gai Tianyuan suddenly said in a deep voice. Leave? Yi Xian murmured darkly, then slowly shook his head. If I leave now, it will definitely arouse suspicion. Even if Ji Yinyang isn't dead, with my final attack, he won't be able to reform his yin and yang souls without a million years. Yi Xian finally calmed down. He was very clear about the power of his final attack. Even if Ji Yinyang was still alive, he wouldn't be able to appear for a million years. The destruction of his yin soul, and the shattering of his yang soul, was no different from death. Even if Ji Yinyang was still alive, he would need a large amount of time to reform his soul. By the time Ji Yinyang successfully reformed his soul, it would be a million years later. In this way, whether Ji Yinyang was dead or alive had already achieved Yi Xian's goal. In truth, Yi Xian's rage wasn't because he was worried about his identity being exposed, but because it was impossible for Ji Yinyang to appear in the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. It was just that Yi Xian's style had always been to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Not being able to personally witness Ji Yinyang's death naturally made him extremely ruthless. As for why Gai Tianyuan didn't tell him about the yin and yang souls, Yi Xian didn't really suspect Gai Tianyuan. After all, if he died, Gai Tianyuan wouldn't be able to live either. Thus, Gai Tianyuan didn't really dare to harm him. Yi Xian was very sure of this matter. However, Although Yi Xian didn't suspect Gai Tianyuan, he had always been on guard against him. After all, this old bastard had always wanted to break free from his restraints. Yi Xian had no reason to completely trust him. Right now the outside world is in chaos. It just so happens that I can enter seclusion for a while to comprehend the 10,000 spirit immortal scripture. I don't think anyone will suspect me, Yi Xian said in a low voice. In any case, Yi Xian had eliminated Ji Yinyang and the others today. This had completely eliminated the hidden danger. He could finally cultivate in peace. As for the chaos outside, it had nothing to do with him. After all, he was only the ninth spirit son. In the eyes of outsiders, he couldn't possibly be the one to kill the four spirit sons. However, before Yi Xian went into seclusion, he still had to deal with some matters. Wu Liang and the others had helped him complete the task. Yi Xian naturally had to take Wu Liang and the others into the ninth spirit palace. He couldn't let them be implicated because of this matter. After all, Wu Liang was the patrolling divine general of the fifth spirit palace. After such a big incident, the Sky Capital Court would definitely interrogate Wu Liang and the others. The only person who could help him rescue Wu Liang was Violet Spirit. Therefore, Yi Xian had to meet Violet Spirit and help her rescue Wu Liang and the others from the Sky Capital Court. Only then could he calm down and enter seclusion to comprehend the 10,000 spirit immortal scripture. Chapter 12:21. Things had gotten out of hand. In one night, the four spiritual sons had all died tragically, and the fifth spirit palace had been completely destroyed. This matter had directly alarmed the Sky Capital Court's first seat, who had even issued a strict order to investigate this matter thoroughly. The 10,000 spirit palace was in charge of the 10th Yuan Hui. It was simply inconceivable that such a thing had happened. No one dared to think that anyone would dare to offend them. Sure enough, according to Yi Xian's deduction, Wu Liang and the others were immediately arrested and brought to the Sky Capital Court for interrogation. Fortunately, other than Wu Liang, the other guards did not know the reason. Naturally, they did not know anything. Needless to say, Wu Liang was the one who had administered the 10,000 poison powder. Naturally, he would not betray Yi Xian. Otherwise, he would also be buried together with Yi Xian. Fortunately, the Sky Capital Court did not treat Wu Liang and the others as murderers. After all, they were only divine generals. Not to mention that they did not have the guts to harm the four spiritual sons. It was impossible for them to do so with their cultivation. However, the Sky Capital Court had convicted Wu Liang and the other divine generals of the crime of failing to protect the four spiritual sons. They were all sent to the infernal heaven prison and would be sentenced to death one day. In fact, although the 12 spiritual sons were of noble status and were the seeds nurtured by the 10,000 spirit palace, only the top 5 spiritual sons were worthy of being mentioned. The rest of the spiritual sons were nothing in the 10,000 spirit palace. However, this matter was too strange. If they did not find out who had killed the 4 spiritual sons, the 10,000 spirit palace would lose face. There were 3 people in charge of investigating this matter: Elder Yuan Tian, Purple Spirit Saint Emissary, and Divine General Pavilion Master. These 3 people had the cultivation of the Yin-Yang realm, and were also in charge of investigating this matter. However, what made the 3 of them slightly helpless was that apart from discovering that the 10,000 poison powder had been administered to the 4 spiritual sons, they did not know who had killed the 4 spiritual sons. After all, Yi Xian was a meticulous person. Naturally, he would not leave any clues behind. Tianer, in front of a grave, a graceful young woman was crying in grief. Her cries were like the cries of a cuckoo, causing people's hearts to tremble. Ling Luoyan's eyes were filled with tears as her delicate body trembled slightly. She looked at Tuoba Tian's tombstone in a daze as the scene of Tuoba Tian's death appeared in her mind. Only his head remained. This was the last time she saw Tuoba Tian. She saw her son die with his eyes wide open. Who killed my son? Ling Luoyan was shrieking miserably like a madwoman. Her eyes were as red as blood, and the hatred in her eyes was so dense that it seemed to have solidified. That's enough. What's with the crying? Suddenly, a figure walked over from afar. This person was dressed in a white robe and had a jade-like face. His body was surrounded by yin and yang qi. It was obvious that the voice had come from this person. Yuan Tian, you have to avenge me. Ling Luoyan suddenly turned around and said to the person who had come with a heart-wrenching voice. Luoyan, although Tianer is not my biological son, I will definitely take revenge for this. However, this murderer did not leave any traces behind, so I'm afraid that we won't be able to find him in a short period of time. Elder Yuan Tian frowned slightly. You are a yin and yang realm expert. How can you find the real murderer? Ling Luoyan said unwillingly. So what if I am a yin and yang realm expert? I don't have the ability to reverse space and recreate the scenery. I can't find the real murderer in a short period of time. Yuan Tian shook his head helplessly. Are we just going to let the real murderer get away scot-free? Ling Luoyan asked hatefully. Unless we ask the Temporal Temple, or the Lord of all Spirits to personally take action, we can only find out the real identity of the murderer. Do you think that's possible? Elder Yuan Tian reprimanded her. Ling Luoyan bit her lips and clenched her fists. She had nothing to say in the face of Yuan Tian's reprimand. It was just the death of 4 spiritual sons. How could this kind of thing attract the attention of an ancient expert? Luoyan, don't worry. Although we can't find out who did it in a short period of time, to be able to use the 10,000 poison powder to kill people in the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace proves that the murderer is from the 10,000 Spirit Sky Palace. Moreover, I have already sent people to the Medicine King Pavilion to investigate. I think we will get the results soon. Yuan Tian liked his concubine very much. After all, her body had significantly improved his cultivation. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he had to investigate this matter clearly. On the other side, in the second Spirit Palace, an elegant and handsome young man was holding a feather fan and a silk headband, giving people a feeling of spring wind and rain. In front of him was a 9-string zither. His 10 fingers were plucking the strings, and the faint sound of the zither echoed in the palace. Clang! The sound of the zither stopped, and the elegant young man slowly stood up. He looked at the distant horizon, and a smile appeared on his face. To be able to kill 3 spiritual sons and make Ji Yinyang's life and death unknown. Among the 12 spiritual sons, other than me, only the first spiritual son can do it. But the interesting thing is that the first spiritual son has been traveling in the outside world for millions of years. It is impossible for this matter to be done by him. Even if he wanted to kill people, he didn't have to hide it at all. But who could the murderer be? The second spiritual son, Li Jiwei, was an extremely terrifying person. His cultivation was at the 3rd level of the creation realm, and he was only 1 step away from stepping into the yin-yang realm. But this was not the key point. The key point was that he was lucky enough to comprehend the 10,000 Spirits Immortal scripture, and he had a deep understanding of it. In the future, he was very likely to cultivate the complete 10,000 Spirits Immortal scripture, and his future was extremely bright. But Ji Yin-yang is really pitiful. His chaotic yin-yang combat body was 1 in a billion. Only when he cultivated to the yin-yang realm could his true potential burst out. Unfortunately, he died prematurely. Otherwise, I would have had another strong opponent in the future. Li Jiwei shook his head and sighed. The reason why Li Jiwei could be friends with Ji Yinyang, the damned transvestite, was because Ji Yinyang's potential was infinite, and not below him. In other words, if Ji Yinyang stepped into the yin-yang realm, his ranking would not be the 5th spiritual son, but at least in the top 3. But this is also good. At least Ji Yinyang is dead, and I have 1 less competitor. The person who killed him can be considered to have helped me solve a problem, Li Jiwei whispered. But this person still needs to be found. After all, the person who can kill 3 spiritual sons and make Ji Yinyang's life and death unknown is obviously much more terrifying than Ji Yinyang. Li Jiwei sighed. The 9th Spirit Palace. Violet Spirit frowned. Yi Xian was saying something in front of her. Little brother, you want me to help you save these divine generals? Violet Spirit's voice was slightly cold. That's right. These divine generals are just scapegoats. Only you, elder sister, can help me. Yi Xian lowered his posture and pleaded. Little brother, it's not that I want to criticize you, but the fifth spirit palace was destroyed, and 4 spiritual sons were killed. This has already alarmed the Sky Capital Institution's first seat. Yuan Tian and I are doing our best to investigate this matter. If I help you release these divine generals now, wouldn't I be inviting trouble? Violet Spirit was in a difficult position. Elder sister, please help me with this. They are only the lowest level divine generals, and have nothing to do with this matter. As long as you say the word, they can leave their lives behind. Yi Xian sincerely said. Chapter 12:22. Give me a reason, Violet Spirit said in a low voice. My subordinate, Divine General Bai Zhe, is a good friend of Wu Liang. Actually, he was the one who begged me. That's why I'm here to beg you. Yi Xian pretended to sigh. Little brother, it's not that I want to criticize you, but these divine generals have low cultivation bases. They have no potential other than patrolling the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. I advise you not to think too highly of them. Violet Spirit shook her head helplessly. She got up and left. Thank you for your help, sister. As he watched Violet Spirit leave, Yi Xian knew that since she didn't refuse, it meant that she agreed to his request. This also caused Yi Xian to hypocritically bow to Violet Spirit. Just as Violet Spirit was about to leave the 9th Spirit Palace, she suddenly stopped. Her calm voice suddenly rang in Yi Xian's ears. Little brother, you didn't kill Ji Yinyang and the others, did you? Violet Spirit's voice was so sudden that even Yi Xian almost didn't react in time. His mind froze. Fortunately, Yi Xian was very shrewd. He immediately came to his senses. Don't joke with me, sister. With my cultivation base, even if I had the 10,000 poisons powder, I couldn't have killed the 4 great spirit sons. Yi Xian pretended to be nervous. Sigh. Violet Spirit shook her head bitterly and sighed. I'm overthinking it. Although they did cause trouble for you, how could you be the one who killed them? Violet Spirit floated away. Clearly, this matter had troubled her for many days. However, she hadn't been able to find any clues. This made her extremely frustrated. She had only blurted out those words because she was annoyed. Yi Xian, you should be careful. Gai Tianyuan's voice rang out at the right time. The smile on Yi Xian's face disappeared. His expression gradually darkened. He said softly, although Violet Spirit didn't mean it, my conflict with Ji Yinyang and the others is indeed suspicious. However, with the cultivation base I've shown, as long as no one has evidence, they can't conclude that I'm the one who killed them. It had to be said that Violet Spirit possessed great authority. A single word from her was enough to release Wu Liang and the others from the infernal heavenly prison and transfer them into the 9th spiritual hall. After all, Violet Spirit was a sacred envoy and a servant of the Myriad Spirit Sky Master. Even some of the major figures in the Myriad Spirit Sky Palace had to show her some respect. However, no one had any objections to releasing these divine generals. When Wu Liang and the rest were transferred under Yi Xian naturally wouldn't treat them unfairly. He rewarded Wu Liang with large amounts of cultivation resources, and there was no lack of spirit weapon techniques among them. This could be considered as a reward for Wu Liang. The news of Yi Xian asking the Purple Spirit Saint Emissary to save someone had also spread. This matter was widely spread amongst the divine generals and immortal soldiers, causing Yi Xian's reputation to soar. Originally, when Yi Xian saved Bai Zhe and the others, his reputation had spread far and wide. Now that Wu Liang and the others were also rescued, Yi Xian's image immediately grew. Countless divine generals and soldiers wanted to see Yi Xian's glory. One had to know that divine generals and soldiers were the lowest existences in the Myriad Spirit Sky Palace. No one looked up to them. Thus, Yi Xian's kindness to them naturally moved many people. There were hundreds of millions of divine generals and soldiers in the Myriad Spirit Sky Palace. Yi Xian's reputation also spread rapidly. This was also part of Yi Xian's plan. After all, a good reputation was more important than anything else if he wanted to win the hearts of hundreds of millions of divine generals and soldiers. Of course, Yi Xian's rescue of Wu Liang, and the others also caused some people to be suspicious of him. They wondered if he had anything to do with the deaths of the 4 spiritual sons. However, when they thought about how Yi Xian was only the 9th spiritual son and a 9 heavens saint king, their suspicions dissipated. Finally, when Yi Xian settled everything, he officially entered seclusion to comprehend the myriad spirit immortal scripture. Rumble, the sound of the great Tao, the sound of all spirits, and the profound meaning of the myriad spirit immortal scripture constantly reverberated in Yi Xian's ears. He sat cross-legged in the void and focused on comprehending the scripture. The myriad spirit immortal scripture was a supreme technique created by the Lord of all spirits. If one could cultivate the power of all spirits, they could at least reach the immortal realm in the future. Yi Xian was immersed in the myriad spirit immortal scripture. He didn't really cultivate this technique, because he only obtained the majority of the scripture. He didn't obtain the most important part, the general outline. The general outline was the core of the supreme technique. Not only did it contain the core profound meaning of the technique, but it also contained many secret techniques. Just like the immortal scripture, Yuan Ling had also cultivated this technique before. However, he didn't manage to comprehend the general outline. In the end, the general outline was obtained by Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian wasn't disappointed. He was only using the myriad spirit immortal scripture as a reference. He didn't plan to cultivate this technique at all. This was because he had already cultivated the power of time and the power of nirvana. If he cultivated the incomplete myriad spirit immortal scripture, he wouldn't have enough energy. Unless he cultivated another outer body incarnation, and let the second outer body incarnation cultivate the myriad spirit immortal scripture, he wouldn't have the energy to cultivate this technique. Yi Xian was no stranger to supreme techniques. The undying immortal scripture and the boundless secular world technique were both supreme techniques that he had studied for countless years. Among them, the undying immortal scripture had even cultivated the power of nirvana. Comprehending the myriad spirit immortal scripture without a general outline wasn't easy for Yi Xian. However, it was still a walk in the park for him. All living things have spirits. The heaven and earth are orderly. If all spirits exist, the heaven and earth will exist. If all spirits perish, the heaven and earth will cease to exist. Yi Xian's lips slightly moved, as if he'd comprehended something at this moment. Extremely profound words came out of his mouth, and his eyes slowly opened at this moment. However, there was an extremely puzzled expression in the depths of his eyes. Myriad spirit technique, supreme technique. It's just that the power of myriad spirit and the power of nirvana go in the opposite direction. Even if it's compared to the power of time and space, there's no similarity at all. Seems like every supreme being has a different understanding of the power. They have all created a supreme technique that suits them. Indeed, they possess an invincible and unique talent. Yi Xian mumbled to himself. Suddenly, Yi Xian was stunned when he finished speaking. He seemed to have thought of something at this moment. Every one of the strongest throughout history is unique. Boom! Yi Xian felt as though his mind was about to explode. A question that he had neglected all this time suddenly appeared in his mind. The immortal God Lord created the immortal scripture, which made him the supreme being of all times. The chaotic universe also gave birth to the power of nirvana. The human Tao Lord created the boundless secular world, which gave birth to the power of karma. The Lord of all spirits created the myriad spirit immortal scripture, which gave birth to the power of myriad spirit. Every one of them was a supreme being of all times. However, every one of them had created their own invincible technique in the chaotic universe. The power derived from this technique is known as the supreme power. This is also their own path of invincibility. Yi Xian mumbled to himself. His body trembled slightly, as if he had thought of something that shocked him to the core. What about me? What about me? Yi Xian's expression was slightly deranged, as though he had fallen into a state of qi deviation. His aura suddenly became unstable. It was obvious that his state of mind was in chaos at this moment. I've always been cultivating their supreme Dharma access. Whether it's the space-time force or the nirvana force, or even the boundless secular world technique, and the astral origin incantation that my outer body incarnation cultivated, they were all passed down by others. None of them belonged to me. Yi Xian mumbled in a daze. His expression became extremely confused, because he had discovered something that shocked him greatly. It was a question that concerned his future path. What is an invincible technique? What is the supreme power? Yi Xian seemed to have really fallen into a state of qi deviation. He kept thinking about this question, and the aura around him became extremely chaotic. He had actually fallen into a state of doubt about himself. If this continued, it was very likely that he would die in this world. Chapter 12:23. Wake up, hurry and wake up. When Gai Tianyuan sensed that something wasn't right with Yi Xian's condition, he roared in hopes of waking Yi Xian from his paranoia. Gai Tianyuan and Yi Xian were now bound together for good or ill. If Yi Xian really did die from qi deviation, then Gai Tianyuan wouldn't be able to live on either. Unfortunately, his roar didn't wake Yi Xian. When Yi Xian sank into self-denial, no external force could help him break free. What did Yi Xian care about the most? Answer: his Tao and cultivation stood at the pinnacle of all life, overlooking the entire chaos-verse. This matter had become his obsession. When he discovered that every supreme expert of all time had walked their own unique path, he was truly at a loss. Picking up the wisdom of others and moving forward in confusion, whether it was the power of time and space or the power of nirvanic destruction, they were all methods created by others. He was just picking up the leftovers of others. When Yi Xian sank into a state of confusion and paranoia, he was extremely depressed and constantly denied himself. Now that his inner demon had been born, Yi Xian wasn't the only one affected. Even his avatar in the distant Nanda region was affected. As the saying went, a slight move in one part would affect the whole situation. His avatar was currently cultivating the boundless secular art, which involved the power of karma. His avatar was also in an extremely perplexed state, and there was an extremely high chance that it would die in the boundless secular art. Therefore, Yi Xian could only save himself. Only when he truly understood where his future lay could he truly extricate himself from his current predicament. Invincible in the primal chaos, and the creation of the most powerful technique. This is the path of invincibility that has existed since the ancient times. But where is my path? Yi Xian muttered in a deranged voice. His eyes were already blood-red as he bitterly pondered this question. At this moment, Gai Tianyuan was burning with anxiety. He could tell at a glance that Yi Xian had sunk into a state of obsession. He didn't know how to wake Yi Xian up, even if he used the power of his soul fragment. Where is my path? Where is my path? Ah! Yi Xian let out a crazed roar like a ferocious beast, causing the seclusion grounds to rumble and shake. The aura from the explosion of space shot out like a turbulent current. Where is the path? Gai Tianyuan muttered to himself as he listened to Yi Xian's crazed roars. This had greatly affected him, because he had also been searching for his own path all this time, but to no avail. Time and space, the flow of time since ancient times. Immortality and extinction, the burial of the heavens and the destruction of the earth. The boundless mortal world, the birth of karma, the chaos of heaven and earth, the rotation of the stars. I have many supreme techniques, but these are not the paths that I should take. Then where is my path? Yi Xian had completely gone crazy. The power of time and space overflowed, and the power of extinction rippled. Even the boundless mortal world technique, which his original body had not cultivated, flashed across his mind. The astral origin art, and the 10,000 spirits immortal scripture, also hovered in his sea of consciousness. All the techniques of the heavens were gathered in one body. Yi Xian was savoring every supreme technique, but these techniques all contain the comprehension and profound meanings of those supreme techniques. They were not his. Stop it now. When Gai Tianyuan sensed that Yi Xian was activating so many supreme techniques, he was utterly shocked. At this moment, Yi Xian was no different from courting death. Every supreme expert had their own path. And even more so, They had their own unique understanding of the techniques they created. If Yi Xian had been comprehending them normally, it would have been fine. However, he had chosen to comprehend them when he was suffering from qi deviation. These techniques would completely destroy his soul and cause him to die. It hurts. My head hurts. All kinds of supreme scriptures were recited in Yi Xian's mind. A feeling of extreme pain filled Yi Xian's mind. He clutched his head in agony and screamed. His entire body began to turn illusory. Danger, extreme danger. This was the sign of the Tao transformation. If Yi Xian continued, his entire body would be turned into ashes and he would die. Damn it! When Yi Xian began to Tao assimilation, Gai Tianyuan felt his body tighten. The power of extinction wrapped around him was rioting. If Yi Xian died, he would be buried with Yi Xian. Buzz! All of a sudden, time seemed to have stopped and space seemed to have frozen. A simple and unadorned little cauldron appeared quietly and instantly suppressed Yi Xian's head. Eternal heaven, primal chaos rotation, 9 cauldrons shattering void, reconstruct primal chaos. The voice was vast and boundless like a song of eternity. This voice seemed to have passed through the universe and stepped through heaven and earth. That heavy and desolate voice abruptly sounded in Yi Xian's ears. But this was not the end. The little cauldron circled Yi Xian's head and poured down a mysterious radiance. It froze Yi Xian's body, which was about to Tao assimilation, and saved his life. Berry! Rumble! The little cauldron transformed into the ancient word berry and pressed down on Yi Xian's head. This also caused Yi Xian's eyes to slowly open. However, the blood-red color in his eyes did not diminish in the slightest. The heaven-shattering cauldron? Suddenly, an extremely shocked roar came from Gai Tianyuan's mouth. His remnant soul instantly stiffened. If Yi Xian's supreme strength had already shocked him, then the appearance of the heaven-shattering cauldron had caused his remnant soul to freeze, and even his thoughts to freeze. Impossible. How could this be? How could he have the legendary heaven-shattering cauldron? After a dozen breaths of time, Gai Tianyuan gasped for breath and stared at the heaven-shattering cauldron above Yi Xian's head. His entire being was in utter disarray. If one were to ask what was the most important item in the 12 chaos periods, it would definitely be the legendary heaven-shattering cauldron. The legend of the primordial chaos. The heaven-shattering cauldron was divided into 9 and contained a great secret of the primordial chaos. If someone could gather all 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons, they would be able to unravel this secret. Legends were only legends. No one knew what was behind this secret. However, the primordial chaos creatures all agreed on one thing, and that was that quite a few of the most powerful experts of all time had obtained the heaven-shattering cauldrons and used them to create their own laws and Taos. The hidden meaning behind the heaven-shattering cauldron was that whoever obtained it would have an extremely high chance of becoming one of the most powerful experts of all time. Of course, this was all just speculation. No one could prove it, but the 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons had caused countless storms of blood in the primordial chaos. This was proof of how important the heaven-shattering cauldrons were. At this moment, the heaven-shattering cauldron hovered above Yi Xian's head. Gai Tianyuan couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't know how Yi Xian had obtained the heaven-shattering cauldron, and he was even more suspicious of Yi Xian's identity. A tiny cauldron? At this moment, Yi Xian's eyes were filled with confusion. His entire body was covered by the light pouring down from the small cauldron. He never thought that the 4th small cauldron would actually appear at the critical moment of his life and death, barely saving his life. Yi Xian clearly remembered that this cauldron had been given to him by Yuan Ling when he was about to undergo the chaos tribulation. Chapter 1224. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Yi Xian tried to comprehend, he could not decipher the mystery of the small cauldron. Later, when he crossed the chaotic divine tribulation and came to the chaotic world, he did not have the time to decipher the mystery of the small cauldron. However, at this moment, the 4th small cauldron erupted with a mysterious power. Not only did it stabilize his body that was about to transform into Tao, but there was also an extremely cool airflow flowing in his body. Heaven-burying formula. Rumble. Vast and boundless, like a song of the ages. The three simple words exploded in Yi Xian's mind, and a series of mysterious scriptures echoed in his mind. Heaven-burying formula? Yi Xian murmured. Obviously, this was the mystery contained in the fourth small cauldron. It was also at this moment that Yi Xian knew why the fourth small cauldron contained the heaven-burying formula. The supreme power. Yes, it was the supreme power. When Yi Xian fell into self-denial, he continued to comprehend several supreme skills. When these skills invaded his consciousness messily, they finally affected the qi of the fourth small cauldron. Therefore, this scene appeared in front of him. Phew! Yi Xian exhaled deeply. He slowly sat cross-legged in the void and began to comprehend the heaven-burying formula, hoping to find his future path. What was the heaven-burying formula? As the name implied, it was all about the word burying. The so-called heaven-burying formula was not a secret skill that defied the natural order, nor was it a supreme skill. It was a method of integration. The so-called method of integration was to bury all the skills and secret skills, and derive a skill that was suitable for oneself. This was the origin of the heaven-burying formula. To put it bluntly, the heaven-burying formula was to let people open up their own skills and Tao, and really walk a path that was suitable for oneself. The heaven-burying formula only had a few hundred words. It did not explain the Tao of cultivation, but only a way to examine oneself. To make a simple analogy, it was like a mortal who wanted to cook a delicious dish. He had all the ingredients, but did not have the recipe. Even if he had a lot of ingredients, he did not know where to start. In the same way, Yi Xian had many supreme skills, but he did not have his own path. The heaven-burying formula was like a recipe that allowed Yi Xian to really create his own path. This was a process of enlightenment, as well as a process of examining one's own body. The heaven burial art could only point out a direction for Yi Xian. In the end, Yi Xian still had to rely on himself. Where is the path? Yi Xian muttered to himself, then laughed loudly. The road is under my feet. My road is under my feet. I'm really stupid. Rumble. Once he was enlightened, he was enlightened. A strand of gray light grew around Yi Xian's body. His cultivation didn't increase in the slightest, but his essence, energy, and spirit had already undergone an earth-shattering change. An indescribable mysterious aura flashed across his body. What is the invincible method? What is the paramount strength? Yi Xian laughed self-deprecatingly. What a joke. This is all a joke. Why would I be so obsessed with such jokes? There is no such thing as an invincible method in the Chaosverse, nor is there such a thing as the paramount strength. No matter how many treasures you possess, no matter how many supreme arts you collect, true invincibility lies within yourself. How can there be an invincible method or paramount strength? Only the invincible method that truly suits you is the invincible method. Only the path of supremacy that you carve out for yourself is the paramount strength. Invincibility in the primordial chaos is all about yourself. Yi Xian roared with laughter. Although his cultivation base hadn't improved in the slightest, his mental state had entered an inconceivable state. If the 10 sovereigns of the Chaosverse were to see this, they would be so shocked that their eyes would pop out of their heads. They had comprehended this principle when they were in the eternal realm. And yet, Yi Xian had actually comprehended this principle when he was in the 9 heavens. If the 10 sovereigns were to learn of this, they would definitely be stunned to the core. There are laws in the primordial chaos, and they are like a dream. Whether it is the power of space-time, the power of nirvanic extermination, the power of karma, or the power of astral essence, they are all paramount methods. Although I am merely learning from others, I will also learn from their methods and create a paramount method that truly belongs to me, Yi Xian. Rumble. The moment Yi Xian's voice rang out, he once again began to recite the various paramount scriptures. These scriptures no longer caused him to suffer from cultivation deviation. Instead, they gave him a sense of enlightenment. Bit by bit, he absorbed the essence of these scriptures, gradually turning them into something that belonged to him. I will create my methods and I will walk my Tao. This method shall be called Earthshaker. Yi Xian's hands formed seals, and one after another, cryptic scriptures were recited by him. Gray mist appeared around his body, making him appear mysterious and profound. At the same time, lightning descended from the primordial chaos universe. The rolling divine lightning streaked across the primordial chaos starry sky, and the sea of stars within trillions of miles churned. Countless stars suddenly turned upside down, presenting an extremely terrifying scene. Impossible, how can this be? Yi Lingtian has just attained Tao for 100 million years, and the 10th period has just begun. How can someone disturb the order of primordial chaos again? Who is it? Who is it? An ultimate seed has appeared, and he has actually condensed his own method in Tao. But the 10th period has just begun, and it is still too far away from the 11th period. How can someone create their own paramount method during this period of time? In the primordial chaos universe, everyone was shocked. Voices of extreme shock rang out one after another, and then they all fell silent. However, after this, the primordial chaos universe also underwent a slight change, and the primordial chaos mysteries began to become chaotic. On the other side, Yi Xian referred to several paramount methods and created the first level of cultivation method. Although this was only his initial creation, the first level of cultivation method wasn't complete, and it still needed to be polished in the future. However, just the first level of cultivation method he had created already possessed an extremely terrifying might, and it had even evolved into a powerful attack technique. World shaking. Kacha. Yi Xian clenched his 5 fingers into a fist, and a wisp of gray mist flowed around his fist. The surrounding space was faintly exploding, although Yi Xian hadn't struck out with his fist. Just the power of the condensed fist was enough to make him feel a sense of trepidation. Yi Xian didn't dare to use world shaking, because he couldn't estimate the power of this attack. Moreover, he was currently within the 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace. If he struck out with this attack, it would definitely attract the attention of the 10,000 Spirit Celestial Palace. That why Yi Xian slowly let out a breath of turbid air. He forced himself to calm down, and the gray mist around his fist gradually dissipated. At the same time he also calmed down. Yi Xian had a feeling that if he used his full strength to fight evenly with Ji Yinyang, then he was confident that he could completely kill Ji Yinyang with this world-shaking move. This feeling was extremely strong, and Yi Xian also believed in this feeling. Although he didn't strike out with world-shaking, he believed that this move would definitely be extremely terrifying. This was because this first level of cultivation method was something he had derived from several paramount methods, and had completely transformed into his own. Although it wasn't complete, and was only a prototype, it was definitely not ordinary. Since I comprehended my own method and Tao from the Heaven's Burial Technique, then this newly created cultivation method shall be called the Heaven's Burial Technique. Heaven's Burial Technique? Heaven's Burial Emperor? Yi Xian's eyes flickered slightly, releasing a mysterious glow. He was muttering to himself, and no one knew what he was thinking at this moment. Chapter 12:25. In the 8 desolates and 6 directions, I shall reign supreme, and I shall be invincible since ancient times. Yi Xian wanted to be the strongest, and the heaven burial art he created was just the beginning. He still needed time to perfect this art until it could truly rival those supreme arts, or even surpass them. This was also Yi Xian's goal. Buzz. Just as Yi Xian was deep in thought, the ancient bronze scripture appeared. The 4th cauldron instantly merged into the scripture, and a new image of a small cauldron appeared on the pages of the ancient scripture. The ancient bronze scripture fell into his hand, and Yi Xian narrowed his eyes as he examined the scripture. He slowly flipped open the ancient scripture, and a total of 4 pages appeared. Each page had a small cauldron image on it, and at this moment, it was blooming with a mysterious light. 4 heaven-shattering cauldrons? Suddenly, a horrified roar sounded in Yi Xian's mind. It was Gai Tianyuan, who was in a state of shock. When he saw the 4 small cauldrons on the scripture, he was dumbstruck, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. How is this possible? Why is this happening? Who are you? Gai Tianyuan asked in a trembling voice. At this moment, he was shocked and doubtful about Yi Xian's origins. The heaven-shattering cauldron was a treasure that even supreme experts valued. Except for the undying Heaven Lord who had won, even the Lord of all spirits had never obtained a heaven-shattering cauldron. But what was he seeing now? A total of 4 heaven-shattering cauldrons appeared in front of him, and all of them were obtained by a single person. This completely subverted Gai Tianyuan's knowledge, and he didn't dare to imagine Yi Xian's origins. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't have the heart to care about Gai Tianyuan's feelings. He narrowed his eyes and continued to read the ancient bronze scripture. A strange light quietly flashed through his eyes. Yi Xian knew that this ancient bronze scripture originally belonged to the undying Heaven Lord, and it even contained the undying immortal scripture, a supreme art. However, Yi Xian now had a suspicious point. The undying Heaven Lord was indeed very strong, and he was even the ruler of the 4th Yuanhui. However, the heaven-breaking cauldron must have existed much earlier than him. So why was his scripture able to contain 4 heaven-breaking cauldrons? Yi Xian pondered over this question, and finally came up with an answer. This scripture was not simple. Perhaps it was not created by the undying Heaven Lord at all. This scripture should be one with the 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons. Yi Xian speculated that perhaps in the distant past, the 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons were imprinted on this ancient bronze scripture. However, something must have happened in the distant past that caused this ancient bronze scripture to be separated from the 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons. As for the undying immortal scripture inscribed on this scripture, it was added after the undying Heaven Lord obtained it. In fact, although Yi Xian's inference was not completely correct, it was mostly as he had thought. This ancient bronze scripture was indeed an extremely ancient item, and its origin was even more shocking. When Yi Xian heard this speculation, a trace of curiosity flashed across his eyes. The ancient bronze scripture was clearly a scripture. According to his guess, the 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons were also one with this scripture. Then when he gathered all 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons, would this ancient bronze scripture undergo some changes? Yi Xian had heard Yuan Ling say that the heaven-shattering cauldrons were divided into 9. Whoever could gather all 9 heaven-shattering cauldrons would obtain the greatest opportunity in the primal chaos, and could completely become an eternal paragon. However, Yi Xian only believed half of Yuan Ling's secret. He was more convinced that the heaven-shattering cauldrons and this ancient bronze scripture contained something that even eternal paragons wanted. As for what it was, Yi Xian still did not know. However, Yi Xian had a feeling that the secret hidden in the heaven-shattering cauldrons would be of great use to him in the future. It might even be related to a major event after he became an eternal paragon. The reason was simple. Eternal paragons were already invincible in the primal chaos. If even they wanted to pursue something, how could it be simple? It most likely involved something unimaginable. However, Yi Xian also knew that it was still too early for him to think about this. What he needed to do now was to cultivate quickly and surpass everyone in the shortest time possible, until he became an eternal paragon. After experiencing today's creation and enlightenment, Yi Xian felt a sense of urgency. If it was said that he was afraid of others discovering that he possessed the power of space-time and nirvana, then the ancient and modern bronze scripture and the 4 cauldrons within it were his greatest secret. If he was discovered, he would only attract the wrath of the most powerful sections. Perhaps he would still have a chance at survival. However, if he revealed the secret of the ancient bronze scripture and the 4 cauldrons, then even eternal paragons would come knocking on his door. And the first one to not let him go would probably be the undying Heaven Lord. If the Lord of all spirits was already so terrifying, then how terrifying would the other 9 eternal paragons be? A single thought from one of them would probably be enough to turn him to dust in the primal chaos. One thought after another flitted through Yi Xian's mind. Even he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Fortunately, none of this happened. Yi Xian gradually calmed down. As long as he acted cautiously, he would be in the safest place. The great rock spread its wings and soared to the 9 heavens. Yi Xian knew that his wings weren't fully developed yet, so he could only keep a low profile until he truly revealed his fully developed wings and soared to the 9 heavens. At that time, No one would be able to stop him. Yi Xian slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air as he dispelled the chaotic thoughts in his mind. As for Gai Tianyuan, he fell silent. It was obvious that what he saw today had shocked him greatly and required him to slowly digest these things. What happened next was simple. Yi Xian didn't come out of seclusion. Instead, he began to cultivate again. This was because he still needed to perfect the heavens burial technique that he had hastily created. He also needed to practice the offensive techniques within it. Moreover, Yi Xian was currently in the Nine Heavens Saint King realm. He hoped that he could break through to the creation realm during this seclusion. After all, the Saint realm and the creation realm were two major realms apart. Only by stepping into the creation realm would he be able to face some powerful enemies. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years had passed. Yi Xian had been in seclusion for 10,000 years. For a Saint realm cultivator, 10,000 years of seclusion was just the blink of an eye. This was nothing to Yi Xian. In these 10,000 years, Yi Xian had consumed a huge amount of pills and spiritual essences. He had finally raised his cultivation to the peak of the Nine Heavens Saint King realm. He was only one step away from stepping into the creation realm. However, this last step had nothing to do with cultivation. It required a kind of epiphany to step into the creation realm. Moreover, it would lead to the creation divine tribulation. The path of cultivation was a path that defied the heavens. Countless talents had died in natural and man-made disasters. Every tribulation was a process of strengthening oneself. This divine tribulation of creation was even more deadly. Countless outstanding talents had fallen under the divine tribulation of creation. Chapter 12:26. However, the chaotic universe had existed for a long time. Countless peerless talents had appeared in the waves of time, and there were always people who could figure out a way to survive the calamity. Let's use a simple example. Why was Yi Xian able to crush people of the same level when he was in the Saint realm, and even had the strength to fight against ordinary people in the creation realm? The reason was simple. Yi Xian had passed through the chaotic divine tribulation, which was only experienced by the strongest of all time. Therefore, even if he did not have a body of battle, he was still invincible among people of the same level. Perhaps some people would ask, since the chaotic divine tribulation and the creation divine tribulation were so difficult to pass, why were there so many people in the chaotic world who had passed these two tribulations? In fact, there was one thing that needed to be mentioned. In the distant and unknown past, there was a peerless genius who came up with a method, and that was to conceal the secrets of the primal chaos and reduce the primal chaos tribulation to the minimum. This way, many people would have a 50% chance of surviving the tribulation. However, the order of chaos was fair. Although the chaotic divine tribulation was reduced to a minimum, the people who survived the tribulation also gained very little benefits. They could only comprehend a little of the chaotic divine tribulation, and the physical body formed was not strong. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for. Although the peerless Almighty had come up with a method to reduce the divine tribulation, it also reduced the people who went through the tribulation to mediocrity. This was also the reason why Yi Xian could kill a saint king when he was in the great saint realm. Of course, for those who did not have the confidence to pass through the chaotic divine tribulation, this method of reducing the divine tribulation would be accepted, but in the end, they would be reduced to mediocrity. Those who were ambitious and wanted to reach the top would not use this method to pass through the tribulation, because these people had the confidence to move forward bravely and would not be willing to be reduced to mediocrity. Many rogue cultivators wanted to join the various great sects, not only for the cultivation resources allocated by the great sects, but also to get the method to reduce the divine tribulation, so that they could continue to survive. Therefore, this was the origin of many ordinary saint realm and creation realm cultivators. Of course, Yi Xian naturally disdained using this method to reduce the calamity. This was because he was confident that he would be able to pass through his own creation divine tribulation and truly become powerful enough to compete with many peerless figures in this great world. When the time reached 10,000 years, Yi Xian finally came out of seclusion, but this time, he did not come out of seclusion voluntarily, because someone had woken him from seclusion. This person was Purple Spirit. Inside the 9th spiritual palace, Yi Xian and Violet Spirit stood facing each other. Violet Spirit was sizing up Yi Xian in surprise, clicking her tongue in wonder. Little brother, it has only been 10,000 years, and you have already cultivated to the peak of the 9th heaven Saint King realm. I'm afraid you will be able to step into the creation realm in at most 100,000 years. Ziling praised sincerely. You're too kind, big sister. If it wasn't for the help of big sister's pills, I wouldn't have been able to reach the 9th heaven Saint King pinnacle so quickly. Yi Xian said humbly. No. Spiritual pills are just external forces. In the end, you still have to rely on yourself. For your cultivation base to grow so quickly, your talent is indeed top-notch, said Violet Spirit with a smile. Yi Xian did not argue with Violet Spirit on this matter. He knew that Violet Spirit must have come to find him for something. Since Big Sister has come to visit, I'm sure you have something to tell me? Yi Xian said. That's right. It's about the Banquet of Geniuses, Violet Spirit said solemnly. The Banquet of Geniuses? Yi Xian was slightly startled. That's right. Listen to me in detail. Violet Spirit said. The Banquet of Geniuses was a grand event for the younger generation. The participants were all disciples of various great sections. Although it was called a sparring session, it was actually a competition between the disciples of various sections. They wanted to see who could lead the younger generation, and whether there was anyone who could become the strongest seed. The Banquet of Geniuses was held once every 5 million years. This time, it was held at the Heaven Mending sect. Little brother, you originally didn't have the qualifications to participate in this Banquet of Geniuses. However, the Heaven Mending sect sent an invitation and specifically mentioned your name, asking you to participate. The Heaven Holding Hall Master could only agree. However, I don't understand. Although you are the 9th spirit son of my 10,000 spirit heavenly palace, why did the Heaven Mending sect mention you in the invitation and ask you to participate in this Banquet of Geniuses? Hearing Violet Spirit's words, Yi Xian was startled. In the next moment, his face was filled with bitterness because he had already guessed the answer. Back in the southern Do Grand region, the news of him faking his death must have been sent back to the Heaven Mending sect. Lu Bai also knew that he was killed by the 9th spirit son, Yao Yueya, so he mentioned Yao Yueya's name in the invitation. Lu Bai wanted to avenge him. When Yi Xian guessed this result, he could only shake his head and sigh. He was also extremely helpless in his heart. Looking at Yi Xian's bitter appearance, Violet Spirit thought that Yi Xian lacked confidence. She then consoled him. The Heaven Holding Hall Master originally wanted the top 5 spirit sons to participate in the banquet. Unfortunately, the first spirit son went out to travel for 1,000,000 years. With his pride, even if he knew about this banquet, he would disdain to participate. As for the 5th spirit son, Ji Yinyang's fate is unknown. Even now, we still haven't found out who the murderer is. This time, only the 2nd spirit son, 3rd spirit son, and 4th spirit woman will participate. You don't need to take action this time. Just treat it as seeing the world. But speaking of which, the Heaven Mending sect has been silent for so many years. Finally, a decent person has appeared. Violet Spirit said to herself. Who? Yi Xian's eyes moved slightly. This person is called Lu Bai. In just a few 100,000 years, he has swept through all the young geniuses without a single defeat. I believe this Heaven Mending sect's godchild will definitely rank in the top 3 in this year's Heaven's Pride banquet. But you can rest assured, this time, you 4 spirit sons will participate in this banquet. You can just be a spectator. After all, the 2nd spiritual child, Li Jiwei's cultivation is monstrous. He's only 1 step away from entering the yin-yang stage. Even the Heavenly Master is familiar with him. With him around, we should be able to handle this banquet. Violet Spirit smiled. Lu Bai. Although Yi Xian was prepared, when he heard Violet Spirit say Lu Bai's name, his heart trembled violently. How many years had it been? It had been too long. Ever since he crossed the chaotic universe and went to the chaotic world, He and Lu Bai had not seen each other for too long. Yi Xian knew that Lu Bai was in the heaven-mending sect, but he could not go to find him. But now an opportunity had appeared. The two of them could finally meet. But what made Yi Xian sigh was that the two of them did not know each other when they met again. Lu Bai had always thought that it was Yao Yuya who killed him. Now that he had become the ninth spirit son, Lu Bai would definitely target him. He might even want to use this banquet to kill him. Yi Xian's mood at the moment was too complicated. But to be honest, this divine son of the heaven-mending sect is really powerful. I have never heard of such a person in the heaven-mending sect. I am afraid this person will be Li Jiwei's #1 opponent. Violet Spirit sighed. Why are you so sure? Yi Xian's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. Haotian Mountain killed the 4 creation battle bodies, crossed the purple sand heavenly river with his own strength, killed the extreme Yin realm ferocious beast in the depths of the heavenly river, took its inner elixir and flew away. He even fought the 3 spirit sons of the extreme emotion, heavenly palace alone, and escaped unscathed. This Lu Bai's battle record is simply shocking. He is almost catching up with the first spirit son of the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. Violet Spirit said in a low voice. He has gone so far? Yi Xian murmured. Chapter 12:27. You know him? Although Yi Xian's voice was soft, it still entered Violet Spirit's ears. She looked at Yi Xian in surprise and asked. Yi Xian instantly woke up, knowing that he had been absent-minded. He pretended to be calm and said, I have also heard of this Lu Bai, but I have never had the chance to meet him. Little brother, although you are only a 9 heavens saint king now, I believe that you will catch up to this person sooner or later. You should know that before the heavenly master reached Tao, he was not the strongest in his generation. However, in the end, he still reached Tao and became the strongest throughout the ages. Violet Spirit thought that Yi Xian had been affected by Lu Bai's achievements, so she was trying to comfort him. Sister, don't worry, I will cultivate in peace. Yi Xian said bluntly. What happened next was very simple. Violet Spirit briefly explained the things to pay attention to in the prodigy gathering, and told Yi Xian to leave for the heaven-mending sect in 3 days. As Violet Spirit floated away, the smile on Yi Xian's face disappeared. He frowned slightly and let out a long sigh. In fact, although Yi Xian really wanted to meet Lu Bai, this prodigy gathering was not the best time. Moreover, if he really fought Lu Bai, it was not the result he wanted to see. What, do you really know this Lu Bai? Suddenly, Gai Tianyuan's voice rang in Yi Xian's ears. Clearly, after interacting with Yi Xian for so long, he could see a bit of Yi Xian's temperament. Unparalleled throughout the ages, an unprecedented genius. Brother Bai is completely worthy of this title. Yi Xian said softly. Gai Tianyuan held his breath when he heard Yi Xian's words. He knew that Yi Xian was an extremely arrogant person with a heart higher than the heavens. To put Gai Tianyuan down, Yi Xian did not even look at him. However, such a prideful Yi Xian was actually praising someone. This was simply unbelievable. Unparalleled throughout the ages? An ancient genius? Gai Tianyuan muttered. Aren't you praising him too much? You'll understand when you see him. Yi Xian's eyes were drifting as he gazed at the distant horizon. A wisp of desolate aura was faintly discernible around him. 3 days later, the Heavenly Court. Speaking of which, the Heavenly Grip Court definitely occupied a very important position in the Myriad Spirit Sky Palace. The Heavenly Grip Court was responsible for imparting cultivation methods and secret skills. As long as one's aptitude was unparalleled, one would be able to learn many cultivation methods and secret skills from the Heavenly Grip Court. The master of the Heavenly Clan had white hair and a black beard. He wore a navy blue Taoist robe. When he opened and closed his eyes, it was as if the stars in the sky were rotating in his eyes. Just a glance at him would make one's heart tremble to the extreme. Heaven-wielding dojo. The master of the Heavenly Grip Court stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Ziling and Yuan Tian stood beside him. There were 3 people standing elegantly below them. They were the 2nd spiritual child Li Jiwei, the 4th spiritual girl, Nangong Xian. and the third spiritual child Lin Daosan, Li Jiwei and Nan Gongxian, were naturally extraordinary. They were like a golden couple, dazzling and eye-catching. They gave off a noble and extraordinary feeling. Just their temperament alone was enough to make others feel ashamed of their inferiority. However, the third spiritual child Lin Daosan was elegant and silent. His blue Taoist orthodoxy was extremely simple. Although he did not release any powerful aura, he gave off the feeling of an immortal. Lin Daosan's body had an immortal aura. Of course, the so-called immortal aura did not refer to the aura of an immortal. It was a kind of extraordinary and untainted temperament that one could only look at from afar and not dare to profane. Third brother, looking at your cultivation, it won't take long for you to catch up with me. Li Jiwei looked at Lin Daosan indifferently. His voice was as pleasant as pearls and jade. The great Tao is like the heavens, following my heart. I just want to go with the flow in my cultivation. Lin Daosan replied indifferently. Third brother, you have a good state of mind. I admire you. Li Jiwei nodded slowly. Tap, tap, tap. Just as the two of them were talking, a series of light footsteps could be heard. This also made them look towards the source of the sound. Little brother. Looking at Yi Xian's arrival, Ziling extended her hand to beckon Yi Xian over. However, Yuan Tian frowned slightly and glanced at Yi Xian without saying a word. As for the lord of the heavenly clan, he took a deep look at Yi Xian. A trace of disappointment flashed across his eyes, because Yi Xian was only in the 9 heavens Saint King realm. Compared to the 3 spiritual children and spiritual children, he was too far away. If the Heaven Mending sect had not specifically asked Yi Xian to participate in the Outstanding Talents Grand Gathering, the lord of the heavenly clan would not have wanted to bring Yi Xian along. Since everyone is here, we can set off. The lord of the heavenly clan waved his hand, and a starry sky giant ship appeared. Obviously, it was a kind of spiritual treasure that could carry them to the Heaven Mending sect. When the lord of the heavenly clan boarded the starry sky giant ship, everyone followed in order. As the lord of the heavenly clan used his spiritual power, the starry sky giant ship instantly cut through the sky and disappeared. The starry sky giant ship's power was indeed extraordinary, especially when it was driven by the lord of the heavenly clan. It displayed an extremely terrifying speed. Although we have the starry sky giant ship, it will still take half a year to reach the Heaven Mending sect. The 4 of you can exchange your cultivation experiences. If you have any questions about cultivation, you can ask Ziling and Yuan Tian. This will also be of great help to you. The lord of the heavenly clan said faintly. He then sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to rest. The starry sky giant ship was extremely spacious. Yi Xian sat alone with his eyes closed. Ziling also didn't want to chat with Yi Xian too much. After all, she was one of the leaders of this trip to the Heaven Mending sect. 9th brother, we haven't seen each other for many years. Do you still remember your second brother? Li Jiwei walked to the front of Yi Xian, with a faint smile on her face as she looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. He also had a smile on his face as he said, Of course I remember. Second spirit child has the chaotic infinity battle physique. In the future, he will definitely be the strongest seed. How can I not remember second brother? Li Jiwei wasn't proud of Yi Xian's flattery. Instead, she sat beside Yi Xian and said softly, 9th brother, I know that Ji Yinyang once had some conflicts with you. However, he is dead now. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come to me. Then I'll have to thank second brother for taking care of me in the future. Yi Xian smiled and nodded. From beginning to end, he was very easygoing, and even lowered his posture. Little brother, I'll teach you a technique. Suddenly, Ziling called out to Yi Xian. This also made Yi Xian give Li Jiwei an apologetic look. He then got up and walked to Ziling's side. Little brother, it's best if you don't interact with Li Jiwei. She is too scheming. As long as you don't offend her, there's no need to really interact with her. Ziling transmitted her voice. Hearing Ziling's transmission, Yi Xian's eyes slightly moved. He already felt that Li Jiwei should have some conflicts with Ziling otherwise. Ziling wouldn't have reminded him. At the same time, Li Jiwei was smiling and nodding at Ziling. However, Ziling coldly snorted and didn't give Li Jue any face. Big sister Ziling, this little brother of yours isn't ordinary. Nangong Xianer slowly walked over. She first greeted Ziling, and then took a deep look at Yi Xian. This also made Yi Xian's heart skip a beat. He suddenly had a bad feeling. Chapter 1228. This woman's gaze? Yi Xian's mind was slightly shaken, because Nangong Xianer's gaze was extremely strange, as if she had discovered some secret of his. This caused Yi Xian to raise his guard against Nangong Xianer. Little brother, little sister Nangong has always been on good terms with me. In the future, if you have any questions on the path of cultivation, you can ask her for guidance. Violet Spirit smiled. Clearly, Violet Spirit and Nangong Xianer were both women, so they were naturally somewhat close in the Myriad Spirit Heavenly Palace. Greetings, fourth sister. Yi Xian was extremely humble, and hurriedly cupped his hands towards Nangong Xianer, but Nangong Xianer suddenly avoided it, and instead looked at Yi Xian with a smile. Ninth brother, I dare not accept this bow. If one day I mysteriously disappear like that Ji Yinyang, wouldn't I be wronged? As Nangong Xianer's words entered his ears, Yi Xian's expression did not change, but his mind was greatly shaken, and a wisp of killing intent quietly flashed through his eyes. However, no one was able to see this change in Yi Xian. Xianer, you suspect that Yu Yi killed Ji Yinyang? Violet Spirit frowned. How could she not understand the meaning behind Nangong Xianer's words? Ha. Nangong Xianer covered her mouth and laughed. Big sister, I just wanted to scare him, but I didn't expect that instead of scaring ninth brother, I scared big sister instead. Little sister can see that big sister and ninth brother are really close. You stinking girl. You usually have a dignified and steady appearance. Why are you so mischievous today? Violet Spirit laughed. At this moment, Yi Xian bitterly shook his head, looking extremely helpless, but his eyes were incomparably cold, because he knew that Nangong Xianer was testing him, so he definitely could not show any panic. If not for the fact that this kid only has the cultivation of a ninth heaven Saint King, he would be the biggest suspect for killing the 4 great spiritual sons. Suddenly, Yuan Tian glanced at Yi Xian, and his voice slowly sounded. Yuan Tian, what is the meaning of this? Violet Spirit's expression changed as she looked coldly at Yuan Tian. I'm just stating a fact. I didn't say that he was the murderer of the 4 great spiritual sons. Moreover, with his cultivation, let alone Ji Yinyang, even the 8th spiritual son, Xiao Yuan, can take his life. Yuan Tian said coldly. Yuan Tian, I know you're prejudiced against him. It's only because of the many conflicts between him and Tuoba Tian. However, as long as I'm in the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace, don't make things difficult for him. Ziling reprimanded coldly. Difficult? Haha. Yuan Tian laughed coldly, then glanced at Yi Xian and said, a mere 9 heaven Saint King. I wouldn't go so far as to make things difficult for a junior like him. However, in this Heaven's Pride banquet, this little brother of yours can only sit on the cold bench. If he were to really fight with the various geniuses, I'm afraid that he would fall at the feet of his opponent in less than a single round. At that time, where would your purple spirit Saint Envoy's face be placed? You? Violet Spirit was furious. She suddenly stood up and released the terrifying cultivation of the extreme Yin realm. She looked like she was going to attack Yuan Tian. What? Did I touch your sore spot? Yuan Tian was not afraid. They were both in the extreme Yin realm, but he was more powerful than Ziling naturally. He would not be afraid of Ziling. He did not back down at all. How dare you? Suddenly, the lord of the heavenly clan, who had been resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. His voice was like thunder, and the aura of the two instantly dissipated. Lord, please calm down. The two changed their expressions, and hurriedly apologized to the lord of the heavenly clan. One of you is the law-enforcing elder of the heavenly clan, and the other used to be the maid of the divine master. Now you're arguing with each other. If outsiders see this, won't they laugh at the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace? The lord of the heavenly clan scolded coldly. Facing the lord of the heavenly clan's reproach, Ziling and Yuan Tian could only lower their heads and accept the scolding. They did not dare to refute the lord of the heavenly clan. Yuan Tian, the conflict between the juniors will be solved by them. If you deliberately provoke Ziling in the future, I will punish you for the sake of the lord of the heavenly clan. The lord of the heavenly clan scolded. Yuan Tian will follow your advice. Yuan Tian hurriedly bowed, but a touch of gloominess flashed across his eyes. Obviously, the lord of the heavenly clan was partial to Ziling, but he did not dare to refute. After all, Ziling used to follow the divine master of the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. The lord of the heavenly clan naturally would not be harsh on Ziling. At this time, Yixian's brows drooped. From the beginning to the end, he didn't say a word. This was because Yixian could tell that the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace wasn't an iron bucket. Under such circumstances, he naturally had to remain silent. Ninth spirit son, this time you will follow us to the prodigy's banquet to increase your knowledge. When you step into the creation realm in the future, you can participate in the next prodigy's grand gathering. You will not be in vain for Ziling to think highly of you, the lord of the heavenly clan said coldly. I will follow your advice. Yixian bowed, but a touch of coldness flashed across his eyes. It was obvious that not a single person there thought highly of him, seeing him as just a small character that was dispensable. Even the purple spirit thought that his powers were very weak. The rest of the people looked down on him even more, but this was what Yixian wanted to see, which also showed that he hid his strength well. However, Yixian had never been a low-key person, since he came to participate in the prodigy's grand gathering. In addition to meeting Lu Bai, he had a bold plan in mind. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye, when the starry sky ship appeared again through space. A vast heavenly palace also appeared in front of Yixian and the others. It was vast and boundless, and the heavenly gate was wide open. 9 rainbow bridges covered the world in all directions, and an ancient palace was rooted in the center of the universe. With the ancient palace as the center, there were countless jade palaces and red-crowned cranes flying and circling in the colorful clouds. This is the heaven-mending sect. Yixian's eyes were deep, and his voice was slightly low. The heaven-mending sect is indeed very strong, but it is still far from being comparable to our 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. However, the current sect master of the heaven-mending sect is a peerless figure, Ziling said timely. We have arrived at the 10,000 spirit heavenly palace. When the master of the heaven-holding hall put away the starry sky ship, a rainbow bridge spread out from the heaven-mending sect. Under the guidance of the master of the heaven-holding hall, Yixian and the others also stepped on the rainbow bridge and entered the heaven-mending sect. At the same time to time, there were people coming from all directions. Yixian could feel a terrifying aura from time to time. Obviously, these people were from various great sects and had come to participate in the prodigy's grand gathering. At the end of the rainbow bridge, a black-clothed man stood with his hands behind his back. Beside him stood a dozen disciples of the heaven-mending sect. When Yixian and the others arrived at the end of the rainbow bridge, the black-clothed man laughed loudly and walked toward the master of the heaven-holding hall. Heaven-holding hall, we haven't seen each other for many years. Today we must get drunk. Looking at the black-clothed man, the master of the heaven-holding hall revealed a rare smile on his cold face. He also walked toward the man and said, I also miss Taoist brother Qing Mu very much. Today, I naturally have to raise my cup and drink to my heart's content. Obviously, the two of them were old friends. Their words were very intimate. Under the guidance of the black-clothed man, Yixian and the others also officially entered the heaven-mending sect. Yixian did not pay attention to the black-clothed man. Instead, he observed the disciples of the heaven-mending sect beside him, as if he was looking for the person he wanted to see. Unfortunately, Yixian was disappointed. Lu Bai was not among these disciples. Chapter 1229. Soon, under the lead of the Greenwood Pavilion Master, everyone was arranged to stay in the Greenwood Pavilion, and the Greenwood Pavilion Master naturally had to welcome the Heavenly Grip Court Master. spiritual fruits and immortal wine were all talked about. Yi Xian and the others were warmly received, while the Heavenly Grip Court Master and the Greenwood Pavilion Master were drinking and chatting merrily, making the entire Greenwood Pavilion extremely lively. I've always heard that the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace has 12 spirit sons. I presume the 4 of you are seated below. The Greenwood Pavilion Master said with a smile. Li Jiwei greets Senior Greenwood. Nangong Xiener greets Senior Greenwood. Lin Daosen greets Senior Greenwood. Yao Yueya greets Senior Greenwood. Yi Xian and the other 3 greeted him one by one. Jiwei Battle Physique, Mysterious Yellow Battle Physique, and Dao Accumulation Battle Physique. Good. The Greenwood Pavilion Master clapped his hands and praised. I've long heard that the 12 spirit sons of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace are all extraordinary and have rare battle physiques. Today I've seen it for myself. But this must be Jiulingzi, right? The Greenwood Pavilion Master narrowed his eyes and finally looked at Yi Xian. A deep look flashed across his eyes. I've embarrassed myself in front of you. Jiulingzi only has the Demon Moon battle physique, and his cultivation hasn't stepped into the creation realm yet. This time, I'm here because of your sex request, and also to let him come and broaden his horizons, the Heavenly Grip Court Master said awkwardly. After all, among the 3 spirit sons, Nangong Xiener and Lin Daosan were both in the 2nd stage of the creation realm, while Li Jiwei was already in the 3rd stage of the creation realm. Just the 3 of them were enough to make the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace proud. However, Yi Xian's cultivation was indeed a 9th Heaven Saint King, which made the Heavenly Grip Court Elder feel a little embarrassed. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Yi Xian. The dozen spirit sons of the Heaven Mending sect looked at him coldly, and some of them even looked eager to try. As the saying went, it was obvious that Yi Xian was the weakest among the 4, Yi Xian, and the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace was in charge of the 10th Yuanhui. If the spirit sons of the Heaven sect could defeat Yi Xian, it would naturally be a proud Heaven Mending sect's achievement. At this moment, Yi Xian lowered his eyes and said nothing. He could feel everyone's contemptuous gazes, and could guess what they were thinking. I've always heard that the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace has countless secret techniques, and is in charge of the 10th Yuanhui. Disciple Zhang Lin would like to seek advice from 9th Spirit Son. I hope Pavilion Master will allow me to do so. Suddenly, a yellow-robed young man walked out. He first bowed to the Greenwood Pavilion Master and the Heavenhold Court Master, before he looked at Yi Xian with a smile. Provocation, a blatant provocation. However, Yi Xian didn't say anything. As for the Heavenhold Hall Master, he frowned. If he didn't agree, it would make him seem petty. Little 9, why don't you spar with him? The Heavenly Clan Master said. Yi Xian walked out slowly and bowed to the Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall, refusing the order of the Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall. Lord, I've been practicing a secret method recently, so it's not suitable for me to exchange pointers with others for the time being. How about 3 senior brothers and senior sisters accompany this fellow Taoist to exchange pointers? Coward. Yi Xian's performance was extremely humble, but in the eyes of everyone, he was a coward. Obviously, he was afraid of the spiritual son of the Heaven Mending sect. This also made the Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall's face turn cold. A trace of anger and disappointment flashed across his eyes. Since this brother wants to exchange pointers, why don't I exchange pointers with you? Lin Daosen walked out slowly and looked at this person indifferently. Although he didn't release any aura, just his deep and indifferent gaze made the spiritual son of the Heaven Mending sect change his expression. I've long heard that fellow Taoist Lin is the 3rd spiritual son. How can I be your opponent? Let's forget about this competition. Zhang Lin smiled stiffly and turned around to return to his seat. This scene also made the Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall's expression slightly ease. Fortunately, Lin Daosan had gotten back his face. Otherwise, the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace would have lost a lot of face today. However, after this incident, Yi Xian was also labeled as a coward. The spiritual sons of the Heaven Mending sect didn't pay attention to him anymore. Instead, they frequently toasted with Li Jiwei and the other 2 from time to time. It was quite a good idea to build a good relationship with them, fawning over the powerful, and climbing up the dragon's ladder. This had always been the root of human inferiority. Even the spiritual sons of the heaven-mending sect were no exception. Yi Xian tasted the wine in his cup indifferently, and was extremely calm from the beginning to the end. However, he could feel that although the Greenwood Pavilion master had been talking with the Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall, his eyes fell on him from time to time. Obviously, he paid great attention to him. If Yi Xian didn't guess wrong, the Greenwood Pavilion master's observation of him from time to time obviously had something to do with Liu Bai. Brother Greenwood, Little Nine ranks 9th among the spiritual sons of the 10,000 Spirit Heavenly Palace. I wonder why your sect invited him to the Talents Grand Gathering? The Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall asked the question in his heart. The Greenwood Pavilion master lightly smiled, then indifferently glanced at Yi Xian and said, "My sect's godchild has always heard that the demon moon battle body's battle prowess can double when the moon rises, so I've always wanted to experience it." I see. The Lord of the Heavenly Grip Hall didn't doubt him, and seemed to accept this explanation. Soon, the welcoming banquet came to a successful end. Yi Xian and the others were also arranged to stay in the Greenwood Pavilion. The lonely moon hung high in the sky, and the stars filled the sky. A ray of bright moonlight sprinkled down, illuminating the courtyard without a speck of dust. Yi Xian stood in the center of the courtyard with his hands behind his back. A cool breeze blew over, causing his hair to flutter in the wind. He looked at the sky without saying a word, and he didn't panic when he heard the earth move. In the breeze, Yi Xian was like an ancient rock, with a sense of calmness. He seemed to be waiting for someone who would definitely find him tonight. I always thought that among the 12 spiritual sons, only the first spiritual son, and Li Jiwei could be counted as important. But today I found that you Little Nine are the one who hides the deepest. A beautiful figure quietly appeared behind Yi Xian. Who else could it be but Nangong Xian? Yi Xian didn't move, nor did he look back. He looked up at the stars in the sky silently, as if he was thinking about something. However, you have truly shocked me. Although the 10,000 poisons powder is extremely overbearing, I still find it hard to believe that you were able to kill Ji Yinyang and the other 3 by yourself. Nangong Xian muttered to herself. I don't understand what you are talking about. Yi Xian slowly turned around, his expression calm, and looked at Nangong Xian indifferently. You don't understand? Nangong Xian smiled coldly. 9th brother, perhaps others don't know that you killed the 4 spiritual sons, but you definitely can't fool me. Looking at Nangong Xian's extremely confident look, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and said, What evidence do you have to say that I killed them? Evidence. Nangong Xian smiled slightly. 9th brother, you may not know, but I know a little about alchemy. Although the formula of the 10,000 poisons powder has been lost, I know that the Yuan Ling grass is the main ingredient of the 10,000 poisons powder. The 100,000-year-old Yuan dissolving spiritual grass that I gave you in the Medicine King Pavilion is the biggest evidence, Nangong Xian said. What a joke, it's just a stalk of Yuan Ling grass. How can you be sure that I killed them? Yi Xian said coldly. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.